What's going on, everyone? Happy Memorial Day 2020. Welcome to your Monday Night Raw review for May 25th. Hope you guys are having a good holiday in the midst of the pandemic, having at least as an enjoyable of a Memorial Day as you can. We're here to talk about a fairly decent Monday Night Raw. I think maybe last week was a bit better. This week was different. Whole new different look to it. Word broke earlier on today about the different atmosphere WWE's going to try tonight. We got to look at it tonight. We'll definitely talk about that here in the stream and in the review, and I'll try to get an opinion from you guys about what you thought about the new look and some of the things that WWE is implementing, and I think it's definitely a step up. Still not sure. Maybe it's kind of weird still, so it'll have to grow on us kind of thing, but I definitely think it's a step in the right direction, and props to them for actually giving a shit about trying to change what's clearly not working for the audience at home. Anyway, just want to say hello to the chat, make sure I can be heard. All right, I look good here. Good to see you, Devlin. What's going on, my man? What's up, Shanus and Tigerzilla, Sonic, Dolan, and Zane, Daniel, Big Dog, Ungovernable, James, Daniel, Ian, Sam, Tim, Alan, Harry Rice, Jet the Hawk, Ian, Miguel. All right, guys. Hopefully we'll have a good audience as usual in here on Mondays. We'll probably get into a little bit of wrestling news if there is any, and we'll run through the show tonight and talk about what you can expect this week in WWE, AEW, and here on the YouTube channel. You won't hear from me, I don't believe, unless there's a crazy news story breaking, because I am back at work now, so you won't hear from me again until Saturday for the Winged Eagle podcast. But this coming Sunday, I also have a brand new review, Patreon-sponsored review, coming up courtesy of a gentleman named Glenn. And Glenn, if you're in here listening right now, this is literally the worst shit I've ever seen, but it's going to make for a really good review. I'm just about done watching what I need to watch, and I'm going to record probably on Thursday and then edit it Friday and Saturday and have it up on the channel on Sunday. But now that I've kind of got all my thoughts in order, holy crap, it should make for a really fun review, because sometimes when things are so horribly bad, it can make for a fun video. So we'll see. We're going to have a lot of fun this Sunday. It will not be a live stream. It's going to be an actual video posted to YouTube. That'll debut, probably premiere at 10 a.m. on Sunday. So just kind of keep a lookout for that. And in the middle of the week here, you might get a gap in some good mic work stuff, unless I've got to come up here and talk about some breaking news or anything like that. You might hear from me, but otherwise it won't be until the weekend. And then I've got some other videos planned as well for June. I still want to get up a live stream on In Your House. Got to find a date to do that. And, I'll be up here for an In Your House review, Backlash review, all sorts of good stuff coming up on the channel. So make sure you subscribe. And I could also really use the likes tonight. So if you could hook me up with a like, I would appreciate it very much. In terms of my channel, what's on there right now, if you guys want to listen to my Double or Nothing review, I did a review immediately following the pay-per-view on Saturday. I thought it was a great pay-per-view, fantastic main event, really fun wrestling show, and the fact that, this isn't on the WWE network, you got to slap down $50 for this thing. It was money well spent for me, maybe not for everybody else, but in my opinion, I enjoyed the show, and I'd pay for something like that again. And the main event was off the wall and bonkers, and it was a blast. So if you want to hear my thoughts on the pay-per-view, hit up my channel and check out Saturday's review on Double or Nothing. As for tonight, we're going to talk about Raw. We got a brand new champion crowned. We also have a couple of matches set for Backlash, now official, including one of them being a title match for the women's title. So we're starting to lay the groundwork for Backlash now. And like I said at the top of the hour here, at the top of the show, WWE has decided to add some humans to the outside of the ring. This story broke earlier today. I saw it on Fightful Select. Very well worth the $5 to get some of this early information. So that came out on Patreon earlier. I got to look at that. And they were reporting that WWE is planning on having NXT people and roster members in the audience, similar to what AEW did. But according to the report, they really weren't going to be heavily featured on camera. Now, on Dynamite, they can be really involved. They can get involved in shoving matches and angles, and sometimes they jump in the ring and shit. So I think WWE is going to try to stay away from that, but that's not going to be able to last very long, in my opinion. Eventually, somebody's going to have to get involved. And we were curious about how that was going to look. Now, a lot of the talent that was there for that to be in the audience apparently suffered today. I mean, they had to wait for hours. There were these air-conditioned tents outside that was providing testing. First time I've heard WWE mention anything on air about testing or the virus in general, maybe a couple times, but it was kind of refreshing to see them actually acknowledge testing and social distancing and shit like that. So when they came on air, I was kind of ready to see that, because the dead stone cold silence clearly for none of us is working. I mean, we all hate that. We can agree on that, right? So even if it was different than AEW or even not as good as AEW, I still thought it was going to be infinitely better and is going to affect the show in a positive way. And it did. Now, one thing I wasn't expecting is for WWE to take the extra step. And not only do they have everybody that's around ringside not sitting down, they're standing. They have to be, 6 feet apart. They're social distanced everywhere. And they have now encompassed or enclosed the ringside area like a hockey rink. They've got like a plexiglass barrier going all the way around the perimeter of the ring and down the sides of the entrance ramp. And that's interesting. When I first saw it, I'm like, Jesus, I kind of felt a little bit claustrophobic because, that barrier is going to affect the sound a little bit from some of the people that are standing directly on this other side of it. The sound is going to bounce right off that, and not go through where you want it. Even though we could hear plenty of noise from the audience tonight on Raw, I thought that might affect the sound a little bit. And it's basically just like a giant sneeze guard. You're seeing that now a lot in grocery stores, and you already see it in banks and things like that. So I wasn't sure at first, but I can see it growing on me. Like I can see getting used to it. Even though it looked weird to the eye at first, I'm like, oh, that's kind of strange. It's better than what they've been doing, So even though I'm not quite sure about it, maybe I'm slightly on the fence, I have a better feeling about this than I did about the complete empty arena. So this is a good thing. Now that you can actually hear some noise out there, I think is going to help the show a lot. And WWE is choosing not to focus on the audience members, but if they really wanted to have some fun, they'd put people like Asuka and Big E and shit like that out there, and Ramblin' Rabbit and all the other crazy loud people in the company. They'd put them out there, but then you'd be focusing on them, so they might not want to do that so much. So anyway, what did you guys think of that? Did you like the look of it? Is it something you can get used to? Do you think Raw is better? Do you think the pay-per-view will look better this way? Do you think SmackDown will look better this way? I'm assuming all 3 shows will have this going on, NXT and SmackDown, I think. According to this report that I read today, it was kind of only for Raw, but I'm assuming they're doing this for all 3 shows. They wouldn't just do it for Raw. So I think this is what we can be used to now going forward, and I think it's better. I think it's better than what we've had, and I also think that there's room for changes or improvements. If WWE starts with this, AEW's done the same thing. They might realize, oh, okay, we got this right, but maybe we should eliminate this. Maybe they'll decide to eliminate the barrier or change it, or I don't know, something like that. Who knows? But if they feel like something isn't working out for TV purposes, I'm hoping, and from the feedback from the audience, I'm hoping that they do some tweaks. So we'll see. Now, before we start getting into the actual results, let me knock out a super chat or two. I know I've got one coming in. Oh, no, I got a bunch coming in. Let me knock these out real quick. Who's first? Taylor Moyes, good to see you, man. Thanks again for the super chat and your involvement tonight. Could the NXT guys invade the ring? New Nexus? Yeah, maybe, especially since most of the people at ringside are all NXT and developmental talent. This could be an opportunity for them to get involved at some point. So I wouldn't be surprised if they play a role in some match somewhere at some point. Totally gonna happen. I also think somebody's gonna go through the plexiglass. They're gonna be saving that spot for somebody. So somebody's gonna dive through there. Somebody's gonna dive through the plexiglass to escape, just like Marty Jannetty did. I can feel it. Just a matter of when that happens. Enrique Cardona, good to see you, my man. Thank you for the super chat as always. You've been in here a lot lately. Sergeant Slaughter just followed me on Twitter. He did. He followed me too. Sergeant Slaughter was following a lot of people today. I even tweeted him. I said, thank you for including me in the 7 million people that you followed today. He just went on a following spree. I saw that too in the morning. I'm like, oh, look at there. Sergeant Slaughter followed me. I got a few wrestlers that follow me, but I was still kind of happy about that. But then when I realized how many people he was following, I was like, well, it's still pretty cool though. And Sarge seems to have fun on social media, and that's cool. That's cool. So he seemed to be having a good time with all of the fans today, like tweeting them and interacting with them. Maybe he was doing it for Memorial Day or something. But either way, it was pretty cool. And I'm happy for you, Enrique. George Morris, thank you, man, for the $2. Hey, Greg, the skin cancer can be treated. Be safe. That is good to hear, my friend. Thank you very much. I think you informed us of that in the last live stream, and that is wonderful, wonderful news, George. Glad to hear it. Antoine, what's up, brother? Thank you for the $20. Extremely generous super chat there. This is my comment, may not be understood, but I never liked that they put Lana with Lashley. I agree. And I really don't like that they are turning her into the mad, jealous wife. It's but glad that it lead to MVP and Lashley. Great fit, in my opinion. Yeah, MVP might be the best fit yet for Lashley, because it seems like they've stuck him with a lot of people. and all of it has kind of been really uninteresting. This is the best one yet. I think jury is still out. He's got a title match right away, and if he doesn't beat Drew, I don't know where he's going to go from there, unless he continues to form that faction and it continues to grow. I like the idea of Apollo Crews turning heel, which we'll talk about him in a minute. So it kind of depends on the future of the faction. But yeah, I agree with you. Great fit for sure. And I hope it leads to some success for Lashley, because everything, the Lana stuff just drove me nuts. I thought it was so stupid and didn't fit and out of place. And why does WWE always want to do this? So I'm glad that that's kind of over, but it seems like they're taking a while to get Lana onto something else, because now she's the jealous, crazy person and not acting right. But Antoine, good to see you, man. Thanks for the super generous donation there. And Devlin, my man, what's up, dude? Happy Memorial Day to you, and thank you for the $5. Very good show tonight. Glad I took the time to watch. Yeah, it's nice to see us get some decent Raws. It's nice to see us get any decent show with no audience. We've been pretty lucky. I mean, this sucks. You know, since there's been no audience, we have really suffered as an audience, as wrestling fans on all shows without an audience. But both companies have done a lot to impress us and have put on some good shows and good matches despite all this, which is pretty surprising, you know. And that was the fact that I didn't regret paying $50 for a pay-per-view with no fans, that tells you something, you know, about some of these matches that these companies are able to put on. So it's been not a horrible weekend for pro wrestling. I think that catches me up on the super chats, and we'll get into the results now of Raw. I think we started off with the Kevin Owens show. He's out there with Asuka. He was also the one that kind of introduced the audience to all of us at home and kind of let it be known that they're going to be there. And that's when we got to look at the big enclosure around the ring. Asuka comes out there. She is just marvelous. I absolutely love her. She's going nuts. Charlotte follows her out after that. Asuka came out first, like chanting Becky's name and everything, which was pretty cool. And then Charlotte comes out, talks some smack, and says, yeah, Asuka, you've had some success, but every time you face me, I've whipped your ass. And then Natalya came out, and Nia Jax came out. And they were the three that were going to be involved in the number one contenders triple threat later on in the night. And the winner is going to face Asuka at Backlash. And I've been talking a little bit in recent weeks. I've been talking a little bit in recent weeks about Charlotte being on the shows. And I said, for all the fans that were getting all over the top, raging, freak out mad about Charlotte being on Raw, I'm like, just chill. It's not a big deal. She is a Raw person that won the NXT title. If she's going to be on Raw every now and then, who fucking cares? She's on Raw. But I said, where I will agree with the fans on is that she shouldn't be on every show. Like, she shouldn't be on every single Raw and every single NXT. She should be on all the NXTs because she's the champ, and then they should bring her to Raw like twice a month. No big deal. I can live with that. 6 shows a month, right? Not only did WWE not do that, they doubled it. So not only is Charlotte on Raw and NXT every week, which I already thought was too much, they're putting her on SmackDown now, too. She's been on SmackDown the last 2 weeks, so she's literally on all 3 shows. She's the NXT champion right now. Now she's going to be on Raw in a triple threat with the winner facing Asuka, when you thought, you know, with your logic, that Shayna Baszler should be in that spot with Natalya and Nia Jax in the triple threat. Instead, it's Charlotte, and it got me thinking, because Charlotte hasn't won really in a while. She didn't win over Io Shirai. She lost to Bayley on SmackDown, and I'm like, shit. She's probably due for a win here. Are they going to try to give her both belts? And she's going to be Charlotte 2 belts? Because with Becky gone, you know, I was wondering if they could say, okay, that's a big void. We got to fill that. So let's put Charlotte back on Raw as the champion. She can be the placeholder for Becky. She can take the reins from Becky. And if you are going to do a big match with Ronda Rousey in the future, you can build that for Charlotte instead of the rematch with Becky Lynch. So I was thinking maybe at In Your House, she passes the belt back to Rhea so they can have a strong champion on NXT and also have one on Raw. But they already have one on Raw in Asuka. So I was nervous that they were going to do that. But Nia Jax, who was the one I expected to face Asuka all along at Backlash, she did wind up winning this match. So, you know, that was good that she got the victory there. But I thought that Charlotte's involvement was unnecessary, and it's one of the areas where I'm kind of in agreement. You know, I've got Charlotte's back in a lot of the same ways I have Roman Reigns back and John Cena's back, but you can't overdo it with her. And if WWE thinks that she needs to be on every single show, all 3 shows for the ratings to do anything, then that's crazy. That's really crazy. Oh, look at there. I got a like from Eric Bugenhagen. How do you say his name? He's the NXT guy. Because I tagged him in a tweet today. He's a crazy person. He's one of the ones that I want to see out in the audience because he's fucking hilarious. So, yeah, the Charlotte thing kind of annoyed me tonight, and I was just hoping that she wouldn't win. But we'll talk about that match when we get to it. All three of them talk shit to each other, basically just hyping up the match later on. That's all that was, and Kevin Owens kind of acted as the moderator there. We had the first match of the night was for the U.S. title. This was advertised, Andrade defending the title against Apollo Crews, and I've been saying all week, I was like, this has got to be it. Apollo Crews has kind of had this story. He got the leg injury. He fell short in the title match. He got knocked out of the Money in the Bank match due to his injury or whatever, and I'm like, if he doesn't come back and win the title after this, you know, I hate to throw the word burial around, but it's like, God, it feels like you're starting something and then you're stopping. So for me, he had two options here. He had win the title tonight or turn heel. Turn heel. We've seen glimmers and glimpses of Apollo kind of being a badass when he got in Andrade's face a couple weeks ago and slapped him silly. I liked that. I kind of like that aggressive, like, don't get in my face, bitch, and slapped Andrade. I liked that side of Apollo because I really haven't seen that side of Apollo. So when I started thinking about him potentially being a heel, I'm like, you know what? Other really happy baby faces that I wouldn't expect to be good heels have surprised me in the past, and I wouldn't be surprised if Apollo did it too. So I thought it was going to be one of those two things. But luckily, he did win the U.S. title. That's what I was hoping we would see tonight. Andrade's had the belt for a while now. The story that they've kind of been telling on TV points to Apollo kind of getting his day here, and he won, which was great. I was very happy to see that. He did an interview with Charlie Caruso after the match. And we've also heard rumors about WWE, or maybe not rumors, I forgot where I read this initially. I don't have my notes ready for this at all, but there have been rumblings of new title belts being ordered by WWE, and one of the new designs is going to be the U.S. title, which makes a lot of sense. They've recently changed up the Intercontinental title, and the U.S. title has never been changed, right? Like they had the WCW version after the buyout, and then they changed it to this one, and I don't think it's ever been different. Well, Cena had the spinning one. So maybe we had that one, but this design has not had an upgrade or a change in, I don't know, 15, 20 years, something like that. It's been a while. So if they debut a new design, I would love to see Crews, you know, be the guy to hold the new design. I just hope it's not as ugly and as big a letdown as the Intercontinental title, which I'm still in mourning over. So if they do wind up doing that, I'd like for Apollo to be champion when that happens. And then some people have tossed around the idea of him still turning heel, possibly even joining MVP's faction, which I think would be good. You know, Apollo and Bobby Lashley together, you know, they look alike, two big, beefy, bald-headed guys. I wouldn't want to get in their way, and that might be fun. You know, MVP, I wasn't sure when he was re-signed, why he was re-signed. It was so random to me. I've always liked MVP, but I'm like, that's a strange signing that he'd not only come back to do a match, you know, or the Royal Rumble or whatever he did, but then come back in to actually do things in the ring and on the mic and have MVP lounges, and now seems like he's going to be heading up a faction. I didn't see that coming ever, really. So, and it's been surprisingly good, which upon his return, I wasn't sure if he was really going to do much for me, because MVP, he didn't do much for me back in the day. Didn't dislike him. He just, you know, wasn't somebody that I was forking out money to see or buy merchandise for. So I am pleasantly surprised the way this is all working out, and MVP's performance, and that this might actually breathe a little bit of new life into Bobby Lashley. So we'll see. But in the meantime, congrats to Apollo, who's currently a babyface and a champion. Best of luck to him. Let's hope and pray that WWE does not ruin this, because I'd say there is a 99.9999996 chance that they will. We'll see. We'll see. What was next? We had a Seth Rollins promo backstage holding Rey Mysterio's mask, introducing his new disciple, Austin Theory. We would see all these guys a little bit later on. After that, we had an Iconics promo in the ring. Now, they came up short in their match against Alexa and Nikki last week. Billy and Peyton even had a little bit of dissension behind the scenes. After the fact, they came out to kind of shake that off and bury the hatchet there. And, oh, we're friends and we came in together and I forgive you. And they hugged and all that shit. Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross come out there to interrupt. And Nikki Cross cuts herself a fiery little promo here. She really went off on the two of them. And, you know, how you dare you disrespect me and all my work and all that. She was good. That was really good. I enjoyed that a lot. The Iconics then attacked the two of them. There's a brawl ensues. Iconics get the advantage there and wind up hitting their finisher on Nikki Cross. So it does look like we're going to get, and they posed with the titles, over their bodies after the fight. So it does look like we're going to get a title match, probably a backlash between those two. I don't know which direction they're going to go here. I like Nikki and Alexa as a team. You should probably keep the belts on them at least for a little while here. So if you're not going to put the belts on the Iconics, are they setting up for a split? And is it going to be one or the other? Is it going to be like either the Iconics win the titles or you split them up? I don't see the need to split them up. I think they should stay a team for a while. I feel like tag team wrestling is so different here in the men and the women's divisions than it used to be back in the day, because now it seems like, you know, if a tag team isn't going to win the title, or at least not going to win the title for a while, you either have one or two choices. You have to split them up or they turn into the Ascension. And it doesn't necessarily need to be like that. You know, like back in the day, there was only one set of tag team champions in the 80s, but there was a million tag teams there, and they were all still credible. You still believed that the Killer Bees and the Rougeaus were good, you know, and even the Bolsheviks to a degree, and the Bulldogs when they weren't champions, and Demolition when they weren't champions. You had the Brainbusters there. Lots of teams that didn't have the titles, and some of them never won the titles, like the Can-Ams, like Ace Orton and Morocco. All those teams who tasted tag team gold, you still felt like they were a good team, you know, where nowadays the belt has to just be passed around from team to team. As long as you are a tag team, it's like you just all you have to do is just get in line and just wait for your turn to hold the belts. And it's so different now. So I feel like in WWE's mind, they feel like, well, if we're not going to put the titles on them, we don't really need them around. You know, where the Iconics, why can't they have, if they're not going to win the titles, why can't they just have a feud with two other girls that's not for the title? You know? That also used to happen back in the day. Tag teams would feud with each other even if they weren't in the title picture. So I don't know why that can't be done now. It's just a different time. So I feel like it's going to be one of those two things. The Iconics are going to regain those titles because they have won them before, or maybe they split them up and try to see what Peyton and Billy Kay can do on their own. But I think it's a bit early for that. And if I'm making decisions, I'm keeping them together, at least for right now. Not that they can't split up in the future. Fucking do it. I don't care. But maybe just for me, not yet. It feels like they just came back, and, you know, I think they need some time. But who am I to say? What do we have next? Oh, next up was the VIP lounge. So we had MVP hosting his VIP lounge. His guest was going to be WWE champion Drew McIntyre. MVP talking smack, saying Lashley's going to beat him. And Lashley winds up coming out because Drew McIntyre says, you know, he's going to, they said this 2 weeks in a row. He said, like, he's going to take this belt out of my cold, dead hands, or over my dead body, or some cheesy ass line like that. And MVP's like, that can be arranged. And that's when Bobby Lashley's music hits. And I love this. Drew was such a badass here. Lashley's music hits. He starts coming to the ring, and then Drew immediately nails MVP with a Claymore, and then just does a perfect nip up. And it's like, come on, bitch. You know, and Lashley kind of backs off and is like, all right. And he kind of retreats, and MVP holds him back. So that was a good little kind of piece of business there. I liked that the champion didn't do the typical kind of ignorant thing and get himself caught up in some weird situation. He saw what was happening. Lashley's music hits. He's like, he's coming down here. It's about to be a 2-on-1. I better take out one of these guys right now. Nails MVP with a perfect Claymore and stands tall, and Lashley stands down. And I kind of like that. So they're set to clash at Backlash, and this issue between them wouldn't be over because they would mix it up at the end of the show as well. Pretty surprising outcome in the Angel Garza and Kevin Owens match. Kevin Owens is making his entrance, and Angel Garza comes from behind him and clips his knee out. So he attacks him during the entrance. Basically, Kevin Owens has to work the match on one leg, and Garza is able to beat him. So, I mean, it was kind of a clean win there, but not really. But I kind of like the way they did that because, you know, Garza could use a big win like that. He did something earlier on, too. I don't remember what match it was. It must have been the U.S. title match, I guess. But he's watching the match, and he's basically just talking about, you know, the rumblings and the climaxes, and he's basically comparing in-ring work to work in the ring and work in the bedroom, and it was kind of creepy and gross. And anyway, he was talking about that. So I don't know what that's about, but he's a total fucking perv. And he got the win over Kevin Owens. Did not pay attention at all to the Street Profits and Viking Raiders putt-putt game, or the mini golf game. I was kind of farting around the house when that came on. I'm not really interested in this at all. Some of these segments have been okay. Some of you have really enjoyed them. I'm not necessarily against them. You know, it's a pandemic. You got to do funny stuff. We've seen vignettes and shit like this before. You know, Los Guerreros used to get into trouble all the time, and there have been competitions like this. I'm trying to think of an example. I know there's some. you know, where this whole like underlying theme here of this feud between these four guys is whatever you can do, we can do better type of thing. I know this has been done before. So it's not like I'm really against it. It's just, I don't know. It's just not working for me. I don't really care. It's eventually going to lead, I'm sure, to another match for the titles. So they're doing this type of stuff. So these two teams don't have to work every single week on TV, because what WWE would probably do if they weren't doing all this stuff is it would be first a non-title match with an outcome and a schmaz, and then they'd set the title match up for the pay-per-view. But on TV, they would do like Ivar versus Dawkins one week, and then the next week they do Angelo and Eric or whatever in one-on-one matches with the other partner in the corner, and it would just be the same repetitive shit. So at least they're trying to entertain us. It's just, for me personally, it's not that entertaining. And I'll tell you this, if Mr. Perfect was alive, all these guys would be fucked, because he'd put them to shame on the basketball court and on the mini golf court, for sure, golf course. And I would too. And apparently next week they're going to do some bowling. That's the big deal. I'll tell you what, I'd whip all their asses in bowling, because I was a hell of a bowler. Carried an average of well over 200. I could whip their asses. Next up, actually, before I get to Humberto and Aleister Black, let me cruise over here to the chit chat, because I think I got a super rolling in. Oh, just one. Okay, I was worried I missed a bunch of them. Ryan Music, thank you, man. I appreciate the $5. Iconics have great chemistry together. Plus, women's tag team division is super weak, especially turn natural teams like the Iconics. Exactly, that's my point. You know, you already don't have teams as it is in the women's division, which is frustrating as hell. So why would you break up literally the only team that you have? I know that you can kind of consider Alexa and Nikki now an actual team, but I still have been suspicious about that shit from the start, because the whole thing started with Alexa clearly being annoyed with Nikki and probably going to use her in a similar way that she used Nia Jackson's storyline. That's where I was expecting it to go. But now it seems like they're actually homies, and they're a unit for right now, but I still think in the end that thing is going to implode somewhere down the line. But yeah, I kind of hope they don't break them up for right now. Yeah, they've ruined the Viking Raiders. I mean, they're somewhat entertaining. I mean, they have charisma, and I've never been a huge fan of their like gimmick anyway. You know, the Viking thing. The War Raiders was just a better name for me. I could accept them more, and they felt a little bit more believable. When WWE bastardized their names and changed it twice, and then dropped their last names or whatever they did, and just completely mangled what they were about, and now they're on TV doing silly shit. Yeah, it's kind of hard not to use the word ruined when it comes to those guys, but I'm glad the Revival got the hell out of there. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, Devlin. I was pretty damn good. I've rolled a lot of perfect games in my life. I've got my name hanging up in bowling alleys and shit. I was the man, Devlin. All right, what else we got next? We have Humberto Carrillo and Aleister Black taking on Austin Theory and Buddy Murphy. So there's a tag team match here. Murphy and Theory's first outing together. I had a feeling they were probably going to pick up the win here. You're not going to drop your first one when this new faction is kind of forming and coming together. And Seth has been, you know, carrying around the mask of Rey Mysterio, whose eye he poked out last week on the steel steps. And there is some news involving Rey Mysterio for next week, which we'll talk about in a minute. So after Aleister kind of gets disposed on the outside of the ring, I think they wind up winning by pinning Humberto Carrillo, if I'm not mistaken. They wind up grabbing him after the match, pulling him outside of the ring, and they're threatening to put his eye through the corner of the steps, just like they did to Rey Mysterio. Aleister Black is in the ring with a chair. Seth holds him off with a microphone, says, "Drop the chair. You don't drop the chair, he's going to lose an eye." And he continues to go on and say that this is stuff that he has to do, and he's being forced to do this, and Aleister better not force him to do what he was forced to do to Rey next week. So Aleister complies, drops the chair, and they actually let Humberto Carrillo go, and they kind of walk away. So Seth Rollins versus Aleister Black is announced for next week. That's going to be a hell of a match. We've already seen these two guys face once. I think the winner should get to use the last name Black. How about that? I kind of hope we get a finish in that. I don't think we did in the first one, and it would be even cooler if that led to maybe a one-on-one at a pay-per-view down the line. I think Seth's going to have to do something with Mysterio first, but I would like to see that feud, like actual feud at some point. Now, speaking of Rey Mysterio, it was announced tonight that next week on Raw, he's going to have a retirement ceremony. So Mysterio is apparently his eye is damaged and he's not going to be able to compete anymore, and he's going to retire. It seemed to catch the announcers off guard when they mentioned it tonight, And you got to think that he's going to be pulling Mark Henry here. Who was it on Twitter? My follower Ren, she's awesome, mentioned maybe Rey comes out with a salmon-colored mask. Hell yeah, that would be awesome. You got to think that it's going to be bullshit. So I don't know if it's a way to get Dominic back in the fold. I don't know if it's a way to set up the Backlash match or a potential triple threat. You know, if you get Dominic and Humberto Carrillo and you get the three of them to face the Monday Night Messiah at Backlash or something like that. I don't know, but you still have Aleister Black involved in this, so I don't know how they're going to do that, but I would assume that this is going to be a trick by Rey to get revenge on Seth Rollins, I think, especially if he has Dominic there with him, you know, to kind of sell it and cry and be there by his dad's side. And you know Seth Rollins is going to interrupt. You know that. So I guess it's going to go one or two the ways. Rey either gets his revenge or Seth Rollins gets his hands on little old Dominic. That might be what happens there. Dominic might be in the ring with him. Maybe Rey has the intention of retiring. And then just like we saw with Humberto Carrillo tonight, with them threatening to put his eye through the steps, maybe they kidnap and grab and nab old Dominic and bring him to the outside of the ring and say, Rey Mysterio, you must face me in a match or something. If you don't face me and call off this retirement, then we're putting your son's eye out. And then Rey's like, okay. And I've been talking about this for a while. This might be a good way, now that we have Seth Rollins in this like cult leader type of character, maybe this is where you do the Dominic heel turn. I talked about the Dominic heel turn back with the Brock Lesnar stuff. And I talked about the Dominic heel turn with the Samoa Joe stuff because I thought they looked alike. And I thought that maybe Dominic could turn on Rey and Dominic could align himself with Samoa Joe and Samoa Joe could be like his trainer and his manager, because Dominic could even come out there in the shorts and the towel. They look alike, you know? So I've kind of been wondering if this is something that's going to happen for a long time. And now with this Monday Night Messiah faction and with Seth basically tricking and brainwashing these people into being his disciples, maybe he's able to get to Dominic somehow. And maybe if they set up the pay-per-view match, that's where you do the Dominic heel turn. So we'll see. I kind of think that might be fun to do something like that if Seth steals Rey's son away from him. Might be interesting. I don't know if it would lead to a father-son match. Never seen one in WWE. Well, yeah, we have. Shit. Vince and Shane. Have we seen any others? I don't think so, but I almost forgot the biggest one. Or if it will lead, or if that's not something Rey would want to do, and it's just going to lead to Rey and Dominic teaming up, because I know Rey wants to do that before he retires. He wants to team with his son. So they could finally have a tag team match against some members of the Messiah, and there could be no heel turn involved at all. It could just be, you know, a good father-son moment, a good kind of bucket list thing for Rey Mysterio to do before he retires, and WWE's giving him that. So I don't know. Where do y'all think it's going to go? Would love to see Rey bring back the lead pipe. I'd be down with that. You guys do me a favor and smash that thumbs up for me, since I got kind of a low audience in here tonight. Yeah, Devlin, I agree. Thanks for another super chat. Bring back the Viking experience. That would be great. What a name. My God. There's nothing wrong with the War Raiders. That was a badass name, I thought. So, oh well. What can you do? Oh, what the hell? Oh, what the hell? What the hell's going on? There we go. Let me get that off of there. All right. Damn, I opened up 2 extra windows there. 2 other YouTube windows. All right. Anywho, what is next on my list here? We've got the Edge promo. Okay. The Edge promo in the dark. He's cutting a promo on the greatest wrestling match ever coming up at Backlash against Randy Orton, and I've made my thoughts known about that. I think that's a horribly stupid thing to do and makes me uncomfortably nervous about an unreachable expectation for this match, calling it the greatest wrestling match ever when it does not need that tagline in any way, shape, or form. It's dumb. It doesn't fit. I don't get it, and I don't know why they're tripling down on it and hammering it down our throats. Doesn't make any sense to me, because Randy Orton and Edge can be great. That match can be great. But there's no reason to call it the greatest wrestling match ever, because you have no way, there's no way now it's not going to be criticized. Because even if they have a 4.5-star match, it's still not the greatest wrestling match ever. So they literally cannot reach that goal, basically. So normally just calling it that, I can brush it off to just WWE and their stupid shit. But given that they're so hell-bent on hammering it home, I think it's going to wind up giving the match a similar criticism that WrestleMania got, and I don't want to see that. I love Edge. I'm so happy he's fucking back. I already thought the fans were a little bit too tough on him in the WrestleMania match. I did not hate it. I thought it had a couple of issues, could have gone shorter, drug out a little bit, things like that, but I certainly didn't hate it and think it was the worst match I ever fucking saw, like some people were saying. So I felt like he already got heaped on a ton of shit for that, and I feel like it's going to happen here again. I feel like WWE has kind of painted these two guys into a corner and giving them an expectation that they can't reach. Now, that doesn't mean that the promos and the buildup isn't going to be good. Of course it is. Edge knows what he's doing in this type of situation. He's believable. He threw out some statistics, said that he was retired for over 3,000 days. In that time span, Randy Orton's had over 1,000 matches, and he said that he's been watching himself on the Undertaker's Last Ride documentary, which was filmed prior to Edge's comeback. And he said, I didn't like the way I was pontificating about the right time to hang it up, and, you know, had a very emotional promo, you know, on Randy Orton. And it was all good stuff. It's just, you know, what are they going to be able to do in this match if they're so hell-bent on calling it a wrestling match? You can't. Can you do a great spot? I mentioned the big glass barricade being smashed through at some point. Do you think they saved that for the greatest wrestling match ever? Have a non-wrestling thing happen in the greatest wrestling match ever? I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm sure the match would be good if it was just Edge versus Randy Orton and that's all it was. I'd be psyched for this. But that tagline is just kind of rubbing me the wrong way a little bit. I just don't think it's smart to really do that, you know? Next up, we had that triple threat match I mentioned earlier on between Charlotte, Natalya, and Nia Jax. This was a number one contenders match. The winner will face Asuka at Backlash. Now, Nia Jax, I thought, was going to be the one to face Asuka to begin with, but as I said earlier on, I was a little bit nervous about Charlotte potentially becoming the number one contender here because Becky leaving could make WWE change gears or whatever, and Charlotte's dropped or has been winless in the last couple of her big matches in NXT and SmackDown. So I was nervous, but in the end, we saw Nia Jax get the victory. She was put through a table earlier on in the match. Natty and Charlotte walked Nia in powerbomb position, and they walked with her from the apron to the announce table and put her through that. By the way, it was nice to see Natalya not dressed like a complete psycho with all that crazy shit she wore. In the opening segment, Charlotte was the one dressed like a nut job. Natty had kind of the old Hart Foundation style leather jacket with the shoulder pads thing that I really liked. A little bit more normal, so I liked her ring gear tonight. In the end, Nia Jax wound up botching kind of a leg drop when she was trying to break up a pin on Charlotte and wound up, I believe, pinning Natalya to get the win there, and now she will face Asuka at Backlash. Asuka was on commentary for this whole match, being awesome. I said on Twitter that the world needs an Asuka and Chris Jericho commentary duo. I would love that. I think that Asuka will retain against Nia Jax. I'm not too concerned about Nia winning. I think you want to keep the belt on Asuka for a little while since Becky just coughed it up. Why hot potato it around now? Let Asuka have it at least until SummerSlam, and where you can set up, you know, something. And I also think that whenever Ronda Rousey comes back and if she comes back and whenever the fans are allowed back into the arenas, you could probably at this point start setting up Charlotte and Ronda for next year's WrestleMania, if I had to guess. So in the meantime, I think Asuka should have a little bit of a dominant run. I don't think Nia is going to beat her. There's no evidence of that to me on TV, that Nia is going to take the title from her here. I really hope she doesn't. So right now, I'm not too concerned about it, but we'll see as the build goes and as we get closer to Backlash if I change my tone on that. R-Truth and Gronk each had a promo on the show. We had Gronk coming in via satellite. He's kind of got a beard now, a little bit of facial hair. He's got the 24/7 title. R-Truth is still hell-bent on winning it back from Tom Brady. Gronk basically says, I hear you, R-Truth, and you can come after this if you want or whatever. So clearly this issue isn't over, and before Gronk starts probably camp and really getting in deep with the Buccaneers, they're going to have to film something here to get that title back, and I'm glad that it looks like that's what they're going to do, and instead of, you know, Gronk signing an NFL deal and be like, look, I can't do any of this shit, here's your belt back. Even though he could do that and it wouldn't matter because the 24/7 title is shit, I'm still glad that they're not doing that. And they're actually going to make Gronk lose this at some point, even if it's in a completely cheesy way. I think R-Truth will find him eventually, maybe even at a training camp game or something like that, or a scrimmage, and R-Truth is kind of hiding out or dressed as a referee or some shit like that, and he rolls up Gronk and wins the 24/7 title. Should be funny to see how they finally get that belt off of Gronk. I didn't catch much. You guys got to help me out. What was the point of the Liv Morgan promo? She talked a little bit about her past and wanting to be a WWE star, but didn't get the point. So that happened. And then in the main event, we had the Street Profits taking on Bobby Lashley and MVP in a tag team match. This was set up backstage when, we saw a lot from the Profits and the Viking Raiders all throughout the show. And then they had some backstage stuff, and they were confronted by Lashley and MVP, who called the Street Profits clowns, and that led to the tag team main event. Now, Lashley and MVP would win. Obviously here, Lashley puts the full Nelson on Montez, and that looks to be like Lashley's kind of like new finisher, very Billy Jack Haynes Hercules style there, and refuses to let go of the full Nelson after the match until McIntyre comes out, makes the save, they start brawling, and that's when the Performance Center talent start emptying out of the locker room and emptying out from ringside. And they do the same shit that you see all the time. It's kind of like a pull apart thing where, Lashley and Drew are both annihilating all the people trying to stop them, and they keep getting to each other, and they have to be pulled away and torn away from fighting. And that was kind of the way the show went off the air. So they're really hyping up Lashley and Drew. Again, much like Nia Jax and stuff, I like Lashley. I'm glad that they're finally doing something with him and giving him title shots and treating him like a big deal, because he should have been that way right when he got there. But I still think it's McIntyre's time. I still think McIntyre needs to go into SummerSlam as champion to defend the title, potentially against Brock again. Would not be surprised if Brock comes back into the fold and maybe gets a rematch against McIntyre, or, maybe by then he can work with someone else on the show. I don't know. But I don't feel a Lashley victory here at Backlash. I just don't. So we'll see. And that's pretty much your Raw in a nutshell. That's all we really have to talk about here. So we'll hang out in the chat for a little bit and hang out, and I'll drink a little beer. I only had one beer left in my fridge, and it's kind of a strong one, so I'll be sipping it slow. We'll answer some questions here and talk about anything else that you want. And I'm pretty sure my mouse is low on batteries, which is why I've been having trouble doing the shit. There we go. All right. Yeah, I think everybody's in agreement that Rey is not going anywhere. That's for sure. Oh, yeah, and that's what I meant to mention. Thank you for that, Tigerzilla Gamer. They're doing like a little B storyline here with Natalya, where she kind of threw her temper tantrum the last couple of weeks, and now she kind of feels bad. I think in the opening promo, she even apologized for it. And then she's doing a backstage interview. I think this is before the match with Charlie. And she gets a phone call or something. She goes, "Oh, hang on a minute, I can't talk." And she, right in the middle of an interview, she goes, TJ. "Oh, I know I apologized," or whatever. She's like arguing with fucking TJ on the phone for some reason. And I'm like, is that really what you do? You just take a phone call in the middle of a promo? Shouldn't you be fired for that? It's extremely unprofessional. Airplane mode, girl. Come on. So not sure what that means. And the fact that she's now talking to TJ on the phone, I don't know if they'll bring him back in maybe to do something and get involved in this. It feels like she's on the verge of a heel turn here, but they're going in a really strange way about going about it. So we'll see. But yeah, so they're doing that thing with Natty, but she needs a change. Natty does very little for me. I respect Natty. I respect her ability. I think she's a good person to have in the locker room. She's a veteran now. She can help guide. She's not a horrible wrestler. She's got a great family bloodline, but there's just something, about her that I've never really like hardcore rooted for, even though, I respect her kind of thing. I've always really, really disliked her wrestling entrance gear and the crazy getup she wears. I much prefer her in what she was wearing tonight because I'm a big Bret Hart fan. Just add some shades to that look. I think get rid of those bunny ears and replace them for shades. I'd be a Natty guy. That's for sure. So we'll see now. There was talk of her going heel a while back when around the time that her dad died. And then they decided not to. So maybe it's time to do that with Natty here and pull the trigger. It certainly looks like it. I don't know if Gronk is going to bring Brady to Raw. I don't know. Hey, Victor Colon, what did I think of the Pepsi glass? I liked it. I prefer Coke glass, but the Pepsi glass was cool. No, I liked it. I liked the look of that. It's weird, it's strange, but it's better than what they've been doing. I think maybe the glass, there's an argument that the glass is too much, but it's WWE's way of saying, all right, we're going to social distance the fuck out of this. We're going to adhere to all these guidelines no matter what. And, you know, it's better safe than sorry. You know, my restaurant is back open now, and we have a lot of guidelines now, and we have, you know, we're only operating at like 25% capacity, and people do have to be spread apart. But there's a lot of safety stuff that really is just, it's impossible to not fall through the cracks. You know, I'm still walking around that place. I'm still in very close contact with people. I still am touching people, customers, you know, and things when I'm taking them to tables and handing them menus and shit like that. So it's, even though we're doing all the right things, there's still a lot of risk involved. And no matter what you do, grocery stores and being around people, I'm kind of going back to the grocery store again on a regular basis, you know, putting my mask on and just going in there, you know, but every time you do, you know, it's, you know, you are running a risk. So WWE certainly look like they're taking all the precautions there. AEW, I think, also has done a good job, even on Dynamite, mentioning on commentary that the talent has been tested and, you know, they're taking all the precautions. I appreciated that. I appreciated the honesty and keeping it real and not treating us like we're fucking four, you know what I mean? So I was surprised WWE took it to this degree, you know, that they are being this safe about it. And that's good because they've had some criticism about not being safe. So the fact that they're, you know, building all this and doing this stuff is, you know, maybe a good sign. But it's still going to be nice when all of this is over. That's for sure. I'm ready, man. Hey, what's up, Andrew? What is my favorite In Your House pay-per-view? Favorite one. I had a couple. I'd probably say was it number 2? It was the, I think it was number 2. It's the Sid Diesel Lumberjack match, and it was Shawn and Jeff Jarrett for the Intercontinental title. That one I liked. I thought Good Friends, Better Enemies was a good one, but it was bittersweet. It was Nash and Hall's kind of last stand on pay-per-view, and really good match between Diesel and Shawn. The 95 episode with Brett and Bulldog was great. Hog Pen match was on that. Owen and Diesel, Taker and Mabel maybe. I like that one. Those might be my top 3. Because there were some shitty ones too. I wasn't a big fan of the first one. I really hated the one in October of 95 that I think was in Winnipeg. That one was really bad. Triple Crown match wasn't one of my favorites. So they're not all great, but those will probably be my favorite ones. Canadian Stampede was a good one as well. But then as you got into like late 97, it felt like less In Your House and more the name that was attached to it. Like I remember right after that Ground Zero, ironically in September, 4 years before 9/11, was the first In Your House that was 3 hours. And instead of like In Your House being on the marquee, now it was the name with like In Your House off to the side. And then that was eventually phased out and the In Your House wasn't used anymore. So I kind of only consider In Your House to be like a year and a half old or something, you know, maybe 2 years, maybe 2 solid years, maybe like early 95, May of 95 until, you know, summer of 97. That's when I feel like it kind of went away. But really that first year is what really stands out to me in terms of my favorite ones. Yeah, I'm curious also if Mysterio will do like something Undertaker-ish, you know, when Undertaker got his orbital bone crushed and everything and he came back with the mask. So maybe Rey Mysterio has something a little bit different looking, you know, something on his face. That might be cool. I need to talk. Oh, that's another thing that was in my notes. I meant to talk about that. Sorry, it's kind of important. I wanted to talk about the Undertaker's Last Ride Part 3 documentary. Got to look at that last night. This one was one of my favorite ones. I think I've said that in all 3 parts. But it was a really good chronicling of the 4 years of matches with Triple H and Shawn Michaels. That was great to kind of relive those moments of 25 and 26 with Shawn. And they talked about the history of The Undertaker and Triple H and how they pretty much got along right from the start. I think Undertaker had his issues with the Clique, but him and Triple H were pretty much always cool. They acknowledged the fact that Undertaker was not a fan of Shawn back in the day, and I always wondered that myself, because I remember hearing the stories back in the 90s about what a fucking raging prick Shawn Michaels was, and I remember wondering to myself, how does that fly backstage with someone like The Undertaker there? How is The Undertaker not shoved this motherfucker's head in a toilet and taught him a lesson? You know, so I think Shawn Michaels, if he's a real big asshole, he's probably doing it to people that he can walk on, and he probably steers clear of Taker. But Taker made it known that he wasn't a big fan of him personally, but it kind of all washed away when you got in the ring with him, because Shawn Michaels could do magic even when he was at his worst. Even when he was at his most douchebaggy level, he still was the best wrestler in the world. So Taker always had kind of that respect for him. So those early days were chronicled, and then as they went later on, and Shawn kind of changed his ways. And that's another thing that made me think, and I realized that. I'm like, damn, it really has been close to 20 years. It's been 18 years now since Shawn Michaels kind of changed his ways and cleaned himself up. It was in 2002. And I just, Shawn Michaels blocked me on Twitter for some reason. I have no idea why, but despite that, I'm proud of him. Shawn Michaels is not, there's still plenty of things about Shawn Michaels that I don't care for. I'm not a religious person. I still think Shawn, despite the fact that he's changed his ways, has shown signs of being a prick before, even after he's changed. Chris Jericho's had a couple of stories or two that really didn't sound good when it came to him. So he's not perfect by any means of the imagination, but Shawn Michaels is a legend. He was one of the best wrestlers this business has ever seen, and based on who he was before, he could have easily gone in the other direction. Shawn could be dead right now, and it would have just added another black eye on the business. So I'm happy that Shawn is here. I'm happy that we don't look back on Shawn negatively, and that he came back and wrestled for another 8 or 9 years and basically made up for all the bullshit that he did before. Shawn Michaels has now been clean longer than he was dirty. Shawn Michaels was probably heavy into the drinking and drugs from about 85 to 2002, so it's about the same amount of time there. So now he's had the second half of his life and the second half of his career as a completely different person, and he made up for all the bullshit before. And to me, that's a success story. So it made me really happy to kind of think about that, to say, wow, Shawn, good job, because it wasn't, you would have told me 20 years ago that you would be, a respected trainer in WWE's developmental system who's giving back to the business, who's there for the young people and positive and clean and has a family and all that shit, I would have told you you're out of your mind. So the fact that he's been able to do that, I thought was great. The relationship with Triple H was a little bit different, but he talked about how they had a lot of respect for each other and grew to love each other. Taker was in Triple H's wedding. They'll be there for each other, even though they don't spend holidays together. I kind of liked all that as well. And they touched on the 2 matches they had at WrestleMania at 27, and they really focused on 28 at the Hell in the Cell, the big end of an era match. And that was an awesome moment and an awesome match. I still remember watching that and just marking out some of the dramatic near falls and shit. And Undertaker's got a photo, and a large autographed photo of the 3 of them standing on the stage after the match, hanging over the doorway of his gym. I thought that was really cool. And then they also touched on their rivalry rekindled from last year, whenever it was, when they had the Taker and Triple H match in Australia, and then the Brothers of Destruction and Taker, or Brothers of Destruction versus DX, with Shawn coming out of retirement, which they did touch on and they did talk about. And I just wish we could go back and have that never happen. But it's that Saudi money. And, Shawn, I always praised him for staying retired. I said he's the only guy that could come back if he wanted to, because some people like Edge at the time can't come back, even if they did want to, even though he's back. But aside from people who were forced out from injury, when it comes to people who are just retiring on their own decision, every one of them has come back. Mick Foley and Roddy Piper and Terry Funk and Ric Flair, the list goes on and on and on and on and on and never stops, ever. And Shawn Michaels was the only person on that list that actually retired when he said he was going to retire. And then he comes back and takes a Saudi Arabia payday in one of the worst tag team matches I've ever seen in my life. And Undertaker admitted that. They talked about what a disaster it was. Triple H tore his pec. Kane's mask comes off. Shawn Michaels misses a moonsault by a mile. And it was the most disastrous match ever. And they talked about it. And it was sad to kind of have to relive that shit. And it would only get worse, because then he'd go back to Saudi Arabia and have another embarrassing debacle with Goldberg, which I think they're touching on next time. I think that's going to be part 4, the Goldberg match. So, it's going to be interesting to see how this thing wraps up and how they close it out in the final parts, and to see what the future of The Undertaker is, whenever he decides to retire, if he decides to retire. I'm still hoping that it happens this year at Survivor Series, if we have fans back in the audience by then and back in the arenas. That would be a great place. But He seems to really be struggling with it. Like and even Edge said in the documentary, he just hopes that he finds that. He hope he finds that moment where he knows 100% that it's closure, that it's time to move on. And that's all I want at this point, because I'm extremely nervous as a fan. I watched his debut on pay-per-view. I've seen every single second of The Undertaker's career. I was a teenager. I was in fucking 10th grade, man. I was a child when he came into the WWE. No matter 9th grade. I don't remember what grade I was in. I was young in 1990. So now that I'm a man in my 40s, my entire wrestling memory basically consists of The Undertaker. I have plenty of memories prior to him, but, the memories with him far outweigh those. And for a fan like that, who's seen literally every second of his career, I need that closure. I need to be selfish here and be like, I need this. I need him to retire in a way that not only he can be happy with, but I can be happy with. And I personally was okay with the glove and the hat and the coat thing at WrestleMania 33. Wasn't the greatest match in the world with Roman Reigns, but I was able to get past it. To me, it was about the moment. So that wasn't good enough for him. He wanted to come back and redeem himself. He did, but he's also had a couple of stinkers. So now, the last time we've seen him was in the Boneyard match, something very different, which is a kick-ass match. And if they announce at the end of this Last Ride documentary that was it, I suppose I can be okay with that. But I envisioned something in an arena. I envisioned something similar to what he did at WrestleMania 33. And if he wants to come back and try that one more time, I'm all for it. And I think, Survivor Series is a good spot, but they're not going to talk about this in the documentary. And I know, they're not, but there has to be something to be said as well for the Saudi Arabia deal. And I love The Undertaker. I respect him immensely, and I don't blame him whatsoever, But when that deal was made with Saudi Arabia, that was after his retirement match, And if WWE was like, look, you can make $1 million for one match, I'd come back too, So that might have had more to do with it than is being discussed on the documentary. I'm curious if I didn't like my performance against Roman Reigns is maybe the cover story for, I can put $3 or $4 more million in my pocket. And if that's the case, hey, Undertaker, more than anybody else, has earned that right. Andre the Giant did the same thing. I've compared the two a lot. Andre the Giant would continue to wrestle and take paydays all the way until he couldn't do it anymore. So when you're in that position and when you are that iconic figure, you have the right to do that. So I ain't going to criticize, but I'm suspicious that also plays a big role into why he said, let me get back in that ring. Just me being real. That's all. Let me knock out some super chats that are rolling in. Sorry I missed these guys. DM23, thank you very much, man, for the $5. And good to see you again. Sorry I'm late to the party, just got here, but I got to say something. Thank God for the 20-something people who made the show feel so much more lively. I agree. I agreed at the beginning of the podcast here, so if you want to backtrack and listen to that, I talked all about kind of the new feel and the new atmosphere. It's definitely better. It's weird with the plexiglass stuff, but it's better than what they've been doing, and I applaud them for at least trying. So I think that's going to improve the quality of the show going forward for sure. Ramon Coffee, what's up, man? Thank you for the $5. Have you noticed Owen Hart looks like Joey Gladstone from Full House? Thanks for that, man. Never thought about that. They look a little bit alike, but I've said that Owen Hart looks much more like William Zabka, Johnny from The Karate Kid, which, by the way, for you Cobra Kai fans out there, where the fuck is season 3? I am dying for that. But yeah, I guess he sort of does look a little bit like Johnny. The only thing, I never watched a whole lot of Full House, but the only thing I remember about him is he always wore a Red Wings jersey. And that's awesome. Go Red Wings. Fonte, good to see you, man. Appreciate it. What's up? Thank you for the $5. What's up, Greg? This could be the last chance for WWE to make Bobby versus Brock happen. True that. And in order to do that, I feel like they'd have to put the belt on Lashley against McIntyre. I don't think they're going to do that, though, dude. But yeah, Bobby versus Brock, I think, should happen. I'm kind of thinking that Brock and Drew might happen again. I know we probably don't want to see that, but I also think it's a very WWE thing to do, and we might get that. And if they can do Bobby versus Drew, keep the belt on Drew, and somehow book it in a way to where Bobby Lashley is still strong and can still continue to kick ass after that, and then Brock maybe regains from Drew, which I don't want to see, then you can set up Lashley challenging, and then maybe Lashley gets a chance to beat Brock as well. Maybe. But I'd be disappointed if WWE had those two guys together and they never had a match. Wouldn't that be disappointing? I mean, we missed out on Brock and Batista. We never got Brock and Batista. If we did, it was in a quick little thing. It wasn't a feud because Brock was gone before Batista was really made. So we didn't get that. And then when Batista came back, we didn't get it then either. So I'd hate to see them miss the boat on this. And if they're finally building Bobby Lashley up to be an ass kicker, this is their chance. This is their chance to do that. DM23, thank you for 2 more bucks. I appreciate it. I was 6 months old when Taker debuted. Yeah, I was a bit older than that, but I remember it. I remember it well. I remember all that stuff about the situation. I remember when he debuted, and I remember recognizing him because I knew he was in WCW. I saw him in WCW a lot, and watched him there. So when he came in, I wasn't sure if the gimmick was going to work because it was also around the same time that we had gimmicks like the Berserker and shit. And, to me, they all kind of seemed the same. And I just didn't, it was kind of a cheesy type of thing. And it certainly wouldn't work now. And it certainly wouldn't have worked with anybody else other than Mark doing that gimmick because he was intimidating as shit with that look and those eyes and that pale ass face and that Wendy's haircut of his. And I remember being creeped out. I think the first time I really realized that as a teenager, I'm still capable of getting scared. It was on a Saturday night's main event. It was right after, I think, Warrior lost the title to Slaughter. Shout out to Slaughter, who followed me on Twitter today. And Slaughter and Warrior had a rematch on Saturday night's main event. And that was when Warrior had started the feud, I think, with Undertaker. And Undertaker rolled out, or he got rolled out in a casket, or a casket got rolled out there. It was the first time we had seen like a casket at ringside. We had seen the funeral parlor thing, I think, when Warrior got locked in the casket, but they wheeled the casket out there and they opened it up, and Taker sits up and does the little look, and it even spooked Bobby Heenan, who said something on commentary, and that was when I was like, holy shit, this is a money character here. Like, he is a creepy individual, and he was doing a good job, I think, of freaking out the Ultimate Warrior, who didn't really seem to like any of this, any of these magic tricks. Papa Shango was fucking with him, and now the Undertaker intimidating him with the casket and stuff. I liked all of that. So that's when I was like, oh yeah, Undertaker is pretty awesome. Plus he's great in the ring. Go back and watch, if you can find some of his matches from WCW. Go watch how he threw drop kicks. He had one of the most crazy vertical leaps I've ever seen. Couldn't imagine him doing that now. But he would almost throw like flat back drops or drop kicks, excuse me. He would kind of land funny, but man, he would get up there so high, so incredibly high. So when it came to big men, he was so much more athletic than a Sid or a Nash or a Dan Spivey or somebody else that was, large like that. He could do so much stuff. And the memories of The Undertaker just never end. He's had a 30-plus year career, 30 in WWE and a few years prior to that. So, he's made his mark, man. That's for sure. No pun intended. I just want it to end well for him. That's all, That's all. I just want it to end well for him. That's all I care about. Oh, wow, Curtis, you got me by a couple of years. You're older than me. You're an old bat, ain't you? You made a will yet? I'm about to make mine in a couple of years. I'm gonna leave everything to you guys in the chat. You can divide it up. You guys can pass out my DVDs and auction them off. Do whatever you want. Dark Side of the Ring Season 3, China is one to look at. Yeah, we're hoping that China's going to be an episode. There's going to be some key players missing from that in terms of interviews, but I think there's enough to get it done. Because you still got people like Russo, Cornette, Jim Ross, who all had interactions with China. You can probably get X-Pac on that show if you wanted to touch on some of that. And I think there's enough there to do an episode. And that's probably one that needs to be done because when it comes to Dark Side of the Ring, it don't get no darker than that. It really doesn't. Yeah, Jordan. And I marked out for that when Jericho said that about Owen on the documentary. I'm like, I've been saying that shit for years. I've mentioned it more than once on this YouTube channel that Owen looks like Johnny. He really does. I've always thought that. So me and Jericho, great minds, man. Ryan Music, thanks again, man. Appreciate another $10 from you, my friend. A personal feud between Lashley and Brock can be set up. I personally don't want to see Brock winning the championship back from Drew, and Lashley wouldn't be the best champion choice. Yeah, I don't want to see that either, but something just tells me, what is Brock going to do? He lost, clean, unless he comes back to lose to Drew again, but that kind of happened last year with Seth, and I don't think we need to see that. It just feels to me like something WWE will do. And Lashley, I was all for him being a contender. I was all for him being champion, but I feel like so much time has gone by now, and now WWE seems to care, but they're going to have to do a lot to make it up to me, because I was all for Lashley, and then they fucking destroyed him, and now they're going to try to make me care about him in 3 weeks. It's going to take more than that, man. So I think Lashley if Seth didn't beat Drew, how's Lashley gonna, unless he has all sorts of interference, which he could, and he probably will, but it would be a strange time to take the belt off of Drew. I just think it would be weird after the way he won it, and taking it off now in that way, don't see it. Now, Raw has got a babyface heavy champions right now. Drew, Apollo, Street Profits, Asuka, Charlotte, I guess technically counts, but not really, because she's NXT champion. So there's a lot of baby faces on the show, so I think some baby faces need to be dropping their belts soon. And maybe that's something you can see from Lashley and MVP. Maybe if Lashley doesn't win the title from Drew, maybe him and MVP have a small run with the tag belts for a while just to keep them relevant, I guess. Could happen. Who knows? And we'll see how that faction grows. Yeah, I guess you're right. I called you an old bat, Curtis, but I'm an old bat too. Good to see you, K-Dog's Kennel. How are you, man? Glad to see you in here as well. I call okay, Brian Spencer, you get the IC belt. Sold. It goes to you. Yeah, you guys help me out. Do you guys know the schedule on this? Because we watched the doc last night, and then after the documentary, it said something like Undertaker Last Ride, and then it gave a date, which is several weeks away. Is that the next time there's an episode? I was under the impression that it was every Sunday, but maybe not. Next Sunday, I believe, is the 31st or something, and then after that is TakeOver. So they're like waiting 2 weeks before they air another one. That's kind of what I gathered from that, but I'm not even sure. So that kind of sucks. I want to see that next Sunday. I want to see part 4, but we might have to wait a while. Who knows? I also saw something today float across Twitter about Ric Flair potentially getting his version of this as well. And that could probably be a good one. It's just they've done so much on Flair already. What's interesting about the Taker one is this: we've never seen this shit. Ric Flair's had the 30 for 30. He's had documentaries done on him out the ass. And there could be an argument made for him, too, for Dark Side of the Ring. Even though his story is not being told yet, done being told yet, he has some dark moments and things happen in his life, and that could make an episode one day as well, maybe in a season 4. Who knows? But if they do a WWE version of Flair, it will be good. I have absolutely no doubt, especially if it's like a 5-part type of thing, because there's so much to discuss in terms of Flair's career. I'm sure it'll be well done. But to me, this Undertaker one is just extra intriguing because of who he is and the fact that we haven't really seen any of this on him before. All these DVDs that I'm looking at right now, all these documentaries: The Rock, Mankind, CM Punk, Piper, Jericho, Daniel Bryan, Paul Heyman, Scott Hall, Ric Flair, Brock Lesnar, Goldberg, Triple H, Jeff Hardy, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, all Batista, all these wrestlers, and these documentaries on their lives and their life stories and their upbringing and their training and their career paths and their big moments. We've never had that on The Undertaker. We've had DVDs with like compilations of matches and shit, but we've never had this style of documentary on him. And that's why this one is so good. That's why this one is keeping us all on the edge of our seat, because, it's Taker. It's our first look at him like this. So it's going to be hard to top, but a Flair one's going to be good. I ain't going to lie. Nikita, thank you, man. Appreciate the super chat. Cheers to you. I'm nursing a beer like a complete puss because I don't want to get any sort of a buzz tonight. I got to do a couple of more episodes of Wrestling Society X to make some more notes on that. There's ridiculous shit that I'm going to review for you guys on Sunday. It'll be premiering at 10 a.m. Pacific time on Sunday morning, and it is ridiculously stupid, but it's going to make for a fun review. I'm excited. So, Glenn, if you're listening, Sunday, my man, Sunday's the day. finally got a little bit more of a respectful audience in here because it was lame earlier. But we'll hang out for a little bit since I've only been up here for an hour and see if there's anything else you guys want me to touch on or discuss. Oh, I don't know, Mike. Dark Side of the Ring on the CM Punk walkout. I just don't think it was that dark. You know, I mean, I think you need some lighter episodes. I think that's what the Brawl for All was for. Although the Brawl for All had some sadness and tragicness to it as well. You know, because you felt for Bart Gunn and some of the careers that were, you know, ruined. And what ultimately happened to Doc, you know, he passed away just a few years later. The Herb Abrams one was also a little bit more lighthearted, but still ended in a death, ended in a very sad death. So Punk didn't really have that sad of an ending, you know. I don't know if that would make a good episode. It would make a good documentary for something, but maybe not like, oh, this is a really dark underbelly of the business. I don't think it was that dark. I think a lot of that had to do with CM Punk's personality, and he just wasn't a good fit to be inside that WWE system where you're, you know, micromanaged to death and you're fucked with and screwed with. He doesn't have the type of personality to be able to swallow that. And I think that's really all it was with Punk, where, you know, who just brought it up a minute ago, Harry Rice, the 2002 Plane Ride from Hell. That would be one, I think, you know, because that could be one like in the spirit of the Brawl for All, because it's only a little bit tragic. You know, there were some sad things that happened. A couple of guys got released. Scott Hall was in a really bad, dark way around that point. I think Michael Hayes was too. We heard some horrible fucking stories and shit. That might be one that would be a buffer in between two gnarly ones. Like if they do China and Canyon, maybe put the Plane Ride from Hell in between those two, because that's almost going to be too much back-to-back weeks to, you know, process as a wrestling fan. So I think Plane Ride from Hell would be better. Mr. Perfect, maybe. Mr. Perfect, maybe another sad ending, cocaine overdose, and Perfect was so awesome. Lex Luger might be better than Mr. Perfect. You know, that Miss Elizabeth shit is, I'll never get over that for the rest of my goddamn life. So that would be a possible one as well. Dark Side of the Ring on Black Saturday, maybe. But it wasn't really dark. It was just business. Nobody died. And it didn't last. You know, Vince was off that network in a matter of weeks or months or whatever it was. Didn't last. And it was kind of a scary day for the Georgia crowd, you know, and the audience that got that TV show. But again, like when it comes to like dark sides of the ring, it doesn't qualify. Yeah, Bulldogs for sure. Davey and Dynamite have horrible stories. Brian Pillman is one that still sticks with me. All those would be great. Well, Corey, they already did LOD. That was the second to last episode this year. Adrian Adonis. Yeah, I've wanted to see Adrian Adonis. That would be a good one too, because he had a crazy career. No, not going to talk much about. I ignored that shit all day today. The Alexa Bliss situation and the JD stuff. I didn't want to weigh in on it because I didn't care. And the day before, you know, he was having a real big problem with Ryan Satin, who I get along with just fine, and I've exchanged DMs with and everything. And I sometimes I don't think he deserves some of the hate that he gets, but I don't really express these thoughts because it's not something I want to get involved in. I really think that a couple of days ago, after we had the unfortunate death of Hana Kimura, that Twitter couldn't even keep its shit together for 2 days. And it was almost like to a disgusting level of just the negativity and the disgusting stuff you're just seeing online. Now, the situation boiled over to where, you know, that beef with Ryan Satin turned into, you know, somebody posted a clip of his from a show from like a year ago or something where he, you know, compared Alexa Bliss's ring work to her work in bed, which you know he knows is a horrible take. You'd have to be a fool to not know that that's not really the greatest thing to say. But at the same time, it didn't offend me in any way because that's kind of his shtick, and I'm sure he says plenty worse than that. And it's kind of what you would like expect from him. So maybe it was brought to the attention of WWE stars. Now they're mad, and now they're attacking him and going after him, and he's just getting it from all sides. So he doesn't need my opinion on it, and I don't need to give my opinion on it. But I knew it was going to be hard to ignore when it was making like news. Because initially, when it was like the Ryan Satin stuff, I'm like, I'm not even going to touch this shit at all. Not mentioning it, don't care, don't give a fuck at all. About two people beefing with each other, I stay away from that stuff. But then when it turned into a story that I'm like, well, shit, it's hard to ignore it now because now the news sites are picking up on it. So I have a podcast and I come up here and do my news first. How am I not going to talk about this that made all sorts of fucking waves all throughout Twitter all day? So, you know, when it comes to, I've never met JD personally, but I've had plenty of conversations with him offline. We've exchanged DMs, we've exchanged emails, we've talked about co-hosting shows together and stuff. And even though I agree with very few of his opinions, anybody that like works hard at a YouTube channel and has a following to that degree, that's hard to do. I'm a YouTuber. I understand that, you know, when it comes to making content, anybody that has a successful channel, like I kind of automatically respect. I don't have to like agree with their opinions. And whenever I don't agree with someone's opinions or their tone or attitude on their channel, I choose to not watch. I haven't watched a minute of JD's show in months or years, you know, because I kind of know the tone that's over there and it's not in my wheelhouse. That's it. I don't go out of my way on Twitter to tell him I hate him and he's a fucking pretentious dickhead or anything like that. It's not worth my time to do that. So he doesn't need me weighing in because he's, you know, he's dealing with a shitstorm. It's coming in from all angles from him now. He's got WWE wrestlers after him. And then Alexa Bliss and Sasha Banks and some people like that have these crazy over-the-top stan fans that now go out of their way. I've made a comment about Sasha Banks once that I thought was lighthearted and my life was threatened. You know, so I'm sure his DMs and his tags on Twitter have been an absolute blast for him today. And the last thing I think I need to do is add to the negativity. I'm almost disappointed in Twitter after the tragedy, the suicide of poor Hannah, when we all should like kind of be banding together and say, hey, when it comes to especially things like wrestling Twitter, that's always so divided and so full of hate and anger and toxicity and all of that stuff, maybe we should think before we say shit, because this is the type of stuff that happens. This girl was posting photos of self-mutilation prior to her being found dead. And a lot of that was because people were attacking her over some incident that happened on that Japanese reality show. So it was it was a lesson to be learned here. And in true wrestling fan and wrestling Twitter fashion, they have no intention of ever really being good people, and they just continue on to spew the negativity and hate. So however the whole thing started, I don't know. I thought it was silly. It really got out of hand. And now I think that, you know, when you get yourself in that position, you're going to have to be fielding so much nonsense here. And I think anybody, no matter how offensive you say something, nobody has any business of tweeting death threats to somebody else or releasing your parents' addresses and shit like that, you know, that's kind of gotten so over the top, you know. But, you know, that's kind of the fire you play with when you really feed into the rage like that. And that's why I know he's going to be fine in terms of his YouTube channel, because the type of audience that he caters to does not give a shit about stuff like this. This isn't going to bother them at all. They're not going to be like, you know how like we're in cancel culture right now, and something comes up as somebody said 5 years ago or 10 years ago, oh, they're canceled, everybody unsubscribe to them. That's not going to happen to him. You know, his audience is, you know, I think a lot of them, based on what I can see, it feels like a lot of prepubescent, immature type of rage-filled shit. But that's, you know, I think he realized that a long time ago, that there's an audience there, you know. So the people that I've talked to that have met JD in person says he's easygoing as hell, you know. So I don't know if that's more of a character that he's portraying or whatever, but when you're that over the top, negative, screaming, yelling like a maniac all the time, you're going to ruffle feathers, and he weathers it. He seems to thrive on it. You know, any criticism, even if it's constructive, he lashes out. So, you know, that's another reason why I didn't want to say anything, because I get along with him, you know, at least offline. Whether I disagree with him or agree with him or not doesn't matter. You know, I have no reason to have any personal beef with him. So if I didn't want to say something carefully like, you know, maybe you should pedal some of that back, and then, oh, you're stupid and you're bald and your YouTube channel sucks. I'm not going to fucking get into that nonsense, you know, this immature bullshit from people that act like children. Not going to get involved. So the cool thing about this, not cool thing, but the one thing about this situation, as it is with every situation that comes up like this on Twitter in wrestling, is it all blows over. In 2 days, we're going to forget all about this, and all of the rage and all the anger directed at him will just fizzle away, just like it does everybody else. Everybody gets themselves into trouble or has some sort of comment that they say, gets a bunch of heat for it. It's big on Twitter for like 24 to 72 hours, and then we forget about it, and we're on to our next crazy anger abomination. So I said way more here than I intended to. I ignored the shit all day on Twitter. It's much better for my sanity to be an observer and things like that, because one thing I've always preached on my channel is just like kind of mental stability, kind of mental clearness and happiness. And I think stress will kill you quicker than cholesterol. And I do not choose to get myself angry. I do not choose to get myself worked up. I do not choose to break blood vessels over people winning matches, because I think when you do that, you're going to be dead at age 52. And that doesn't mean somebody else doesn't have the right to do that. Do it. Do it. I'm just not going to be a part of it, and I'd rather not participate in it. But man, the tags today on Twitter, GoodMicWork, what do you think about this? GoodMicWork, what do you think about this? And all I could think to in my head, even though I didn't respond, I was thinking of, why does it matter? You know, I got a DM tonight from another YouTuber. I noticed you didn't mention anything about the shit or whatever. Is there any reason for that? I'm like, because I don't care. I don't give a shit. I don't want to get involved in it. I'm glad that I'm not involved in it. You know, so it's not worth it, because it's going to be over in a couple days. We'll forget about it, be moving on, and we'll all be going on our merry little way here. But I think the lesson to be learned here is that in the face of a tragedy like we saw with Hana Kimura, it really feels, and it's disappointing to say this, it really feels like it's impossible for the wrestling fans to ever just come together and be positive. And in the last few years, I've really focused on that on our channel here. And I'm saying I'm so done with that. You know, I the level-headed people that I'm cool with on YouTube, my friends Steven Larson and Brian Zane, you know, Solomonster, guys like that. You're not hearing a whole lot of them out of this either, because it's silly. You know, why just get involved in that anger and that hate from both sides, regardless of what side you're on in this? There is negativity and hate being spewed on both sides. You know, regardless of who started it or whatever, everybody can have that opinion. Doesn't fucking matter. And I certainly don't care. Don't care. But it's evil. It's evil hate, and it's coming from both sides. It's flying at him, and he's sending it back. And I don't think that is beneficial to the wrestling fans at all. And all it does is feed into the anger and the hate and the rage that already exists way too much in abundance on wrestling social media as it is. And I think it's harmful. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's healthy to be upset and crazy and confrontational and be so obsessed about what other people think. I don't give a fuck if another YouTuber likes a show or not. I see a lot of people on Twitter giving their 2 cents about a show. I'm not going to watch the AEW pay-per-view tonight. I don't give a fuck. Why are you telling me this? I don't care. You're not going to influence me at all. I'm my own goddamn man. I don't need anybody telling me what I should like, and I don't need anybody arrogantly and pretentiously claiming that they speak facts. An opinion is not a fact. An opinion is an opinion. And if you say, and even people say that about me, I appreciate the compliment, but I don't want it. I don't want people going on Twitter and saying, I listen to GoodMicWork because he speaks facts. Don't say that. I don't like being that arrogant asshole, you know, and regardless of what side of, you know, the political fence you're on, you can't argue that Donald Trump is a lot like that. Hey, look at how great I am, everybody. Look at my lavish cars. Look at how great I am. I've done a great job with everything. That just reeks of insecurity to me. You know, whether you're the president or whether you're a YouTuber or you're a person in real life, whenever you have to constantly build yourself up to others, that means that you're insecure and you're a fucking bully. And I will never go on YouTube talking about how great my life is. I've got a great life. I drive a great car. I make more money than you. Look at your shitty followers. I'll continue to be the greatest person ever, and you can continue to suck. That attitude ain't going to get you laid. I promise you. So I think there's way too much of that arrogance, and I think there's way too much of that pretentiousness. I see that on Twitter just from regular people. You know, I can tweet out just an easygoing opinion, and I can have my head ripped off, you know, by somebody who clearly has rage issues. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to fucking ignore that, you know, so utilize that block button. I don't understand why a simple, educated, mature comment without even any curse words in it can spark that type of rage in you, but it's everywhere out there. So I'm turned off. I'm turned off by the negativity. I love the Twitter app because it's the only app I have. I use the Facebook, but barely. And I'm not on Instagram. So I do like Twitter because it can always entertain me, and it can always provide me with news, and it's fun to discuss things with some of the cooler, you know, audience members that I have and all that. And I really appreciate that, and I like it. But when it comes to that negativity, you know, that's where the mute button comes in handy. And, you know, when you get to a certain age, you just want that shit out of your life. You know, I highly recommend not living a stressful life. I'm lucky. I live in California. I live in fucking San Diego. It's sunny and bright and beautiful and gorgeous and great every single fucking day of the year here. I have no reason to be angry. I have a great job. I have a great girlfriend. I have a great house. I have a great YouTube channel. I got a great audience base. I live in a great city with great weather. I have no reason to be angry and mad and confrontational all the time. You know, I'm laid back. I partake in the green gimmick. I just like to chill. And I don't like this, and I don't like when it happens. And if it was up to me, everybody would just get along. There are people in the community whose opinions I don't like, but I still have really good conversations with. I appreciate that. I appreciate when people who have differences can come together and just have a conversation. Me and JD exchanged a couple of tweets not long ago about our favorite beer. I'm like, see, we don't have to be on the same page. You don't have to be an enemy if you have different opinions from somebody else. And I think there's way too much of that in wrestling. You have to be, if you don't think my way, you're my enemy. And I think that's unhealthy. I don't think that's good for anybody. I'd rather be at a community. I'd rather ask a question on Twitter, hey, what did you think about this show tonight? And not see somebody say, WWE's the biggest bunch of dumb fucks and I wish somebody would blow their damn company up. But you're going to get that in there somewhere. When all I asked was, did you like the show? Thumbs up, thumbs down. What would you grade it? Oh, they fucking suck and AEW is better and stuff. It's just constant negative. And you guys know that, people, no matter where you live in the world, sports fans. If you live overseas, people are nuts about soccer. If you live here, they're nuts about football or basketball, and they're very tribal, and when it comes to, your favorite team, they can be psychos. But I feel like nothing is worse and nobody is worse than wrestling fans. They are absolutely the worst when it comes to this. And I've never seen so much hate spewed out from all sorts of sides. And even people who try to be positive can somehow start reverting into that negativity as well, and that's what a lot of people were being accused of too online today. Well, now you're getting mad at him for bullying, and now you're being the bully. I didn't really see any of that. I don't really agree with that unless somebody is physically threatening him. Like Sonya Deville said, I hope I run into him one day. Well, what do you mean? Are you going to stab him? Because that ain't cool. He doesn't deserve to be stabbed. If you're going to give him a piece of your mind, sure, that's harmless or whatever. That's not bullying. That's just saying I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. But if you're threatening harm to someone, fuck you. If you're threatening harm to someone, you got no business doing that. If you can't control your anger, if you can't let something like that slide off you to where you are so angry about what somebody else said that you want them to die, you need help just as much as the crazy fucking comments that came out of the person's mouth. So I think that wrestling community and the fans, especially online, need help. We all do. I think we need to better this community. We need to try to get things that are not so divisive, because right now we should all be banding together. We're in the middle of a pandemic and we got the weirdest looking product across both shows right now, and times are hard, and a lot of us are, either working through a pandemic, risking our lives, unemployed due to the pandemic, or, social distancing and just leading a whole different existence right now. This is not the time to be at odds, and there's just way too much of that in general in the world. Now it's to the point where if you wear a mask, you're a liberal, and if you don't, you're a Republican. That is fucking stupid. But it's literally where we are. It's literally where we are. And so, I guess it goes across the board here. It's not just in wrestling. I feel like wrestling is really bad, but when it comes to stuff like that, I just wish that, I just wish that things could be a little bit more civil between people, because I've fallen down the rabbit hole before on Twitter and gotten myself into arguments with people that I've regretted. And then like 5 seconds in, I'm like, what the hell am I doing arguing with this guy? He's fucking invisible. He's nobody. I'm not going to give him the time of day, but I do. And then I get involved in an argument. I'm like, oh, fuck this. And I keep telling myself never again. And I'm pretty good at it. Like rarely do I get involved. I got to just be maybe bored at work or just in a shitty mood. And then maybe I bark back at something, at some shitty comment somebody left. But for the most part, I don't care. I mute anybody that says anything remotely fucking negative or something. I'm like, yeah, I'll just mute you. I'm not going to block you because then you'll be all pissed that I blocked you. I'll just mute you, and then you can tweet your balls off to me and I'll never know. And, ignorance is bliss. So if I don't have to hear you or see you, then I ain't going to know you're there, and you can just talk into the fucking wind. So that's usually the way I handle it. And I think that if I had any advice to give to anybody, it's just try to let shit slide off you a little bit more. As a YouTuber with thousands of Twitter followers and stuff, it's easier for us to get a lot of shit. So I guess I get more than maybe the average person, but I still feel like the community here is really cool, and people usually don't come after me, attack me on Twitter. And when they do, it literally doesn't bother me at all, because it doesn't happen like all the time. Where somebody like JD, he can't ignore the trolls. Somebody, they get on his case and they say shitty stuff to him, and then he's got to bark back and give him the attention that he shouldn't. He's huge. He's got a huge following. They have no following. Just ignore him. But some people don't have that in their personality, where I really don't give a fuck what anybody thinks of me or anything like that, or fans or whatever. I try to be as fair and as mature on this commentary as possible. I learned very early on when I started this YouTube channel that anger is for amateurs, and to put on this front and to be angry and ranting all the time might get you some views, and it did for me, but it's not a healthy way to live. And, you know, Jim Cornette is funny because I'm using a quote from him, even though he's the biggest offender of this. He once said in an interview, a shoot interview, why am I going to make myself mad in my own home? And I've always believed that, and I've always kind of lived by that. Yeah, why would you get yourself worked up, angry, and mad in the comfort of your own home? Now, this is something that he does every fucking week on his podcast, gets raging, head blown off mad about Kenny Omega wrestling a match for some reason. So he's not practicing what he preaches at all, but I heard him when he said that, and I thought it was good advice. And I've taken to that advice, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe being, you know, an angry person ranting on Hulk Hogan isn't the best direction for this YouTube channel to go. And maybe being something and someone that people can come across and say, hey, I like this guy's opinion. He seems rational. He doesn't seem like an unreasonable maniac. I'm going to stick with him. I thought that was a better way to grow an audience. And, you know, we haven't grown to 100,000 subs or anything, but we have a much more chilled, laid back vibe here to where you don't have to worry about the toxic crap. We really avoid that here. I mean, you guys are in here, Devlin and all you guys in the chat. How often do we really have like super crazy trolls? You know, how often do my monkey wrenches really have to go out of their way to block trolls? It's pretty rare in here, you know, because we just don't get into that here. That's not this environment. You've come to the wrong place if you want to be a douchebag. You know, there's plenty of other places to go on YouTube, believe me, where you can be a douchebag. So that's not something I ever wanted to get involved in, and I'm glad I didn't. And yeah, so I knew I couldn't avoid that story, but I also didn't want to ruffle any feathers. I don't want to cause any more fucking problems. And I certainly don't want to start a war with somebody that I don't give a fuck about, you know? Like, that's just not what I'm trying to do here. So, you know, whatever. It is what it is. We'll see. We'll see in the future. Joshua, thank you, brother, for the super chat, the $1.99. This super chat is in dedication of Vanguard 1. Oh, very sad. But, you know, the concept has been resurrected. We now have Neo 1, Natural Electronic Organism 1, that is here, and that's pretty awesome. So it lives on. And I had a feeling that would happen because I thought about when Jake the Snake Roberts lost Damien when he was squashed by Earthquake and he brought back Lucifer on the next show. That was awesome. So now we got a new drone, and hopefully this one lasts and lives longer than 4 years. But I appreciate the super chat. Dark Side of the Ring on Iron Mike Sharp. Oh, man. I don't know if his situation is that dark either. There was one sad story. He got his ass kicked backstage. I forgot who beat him up. Might have been Billy Jack Haynes, who I hate. Forgot who it was, but he had one kind of embarrassing moment. But he was a character, man. I loved watching him on TV. I loved because he would always job, but the way he would grunt, and he was on Raw a couple times. I remember him picking up a couple job matches on like 94. So you'd see him around from like mid 80s all the way to early 90s. Very, very, very cool. Yeah, you know, I mean, and Jim Cornette brought up a really good point with that, and I swear it's something that's stuck with me ever since. I think it was a Kayfabe Commentaries interview or one of those shoot interviews that he did, and he said, well, I'm going to make myself mad in my own home. I'm like, exactly. I love my home. I love being here. I got a great place, man, just chilling here with all you guys, and I got my cats, and I got a fridge full of food, and I got 4 fucking TVs in here, and entertainment, and a balcony, and beautiful weather. You're like, I'm comfortable here. I don't want to be upset here. Don't want to be upset here. So I could never, sit in front of a webcam and scream at the top of my lungs in anger because that's unhealthy, man. But that's me. Everybody has a right to live their life the way they want. And if you want to be angry and mad, be angry and mad. Like I give a shit. But I definitely believe in the stress thing because I've had a pretty lucky life in terms of not being too overly stressed, but we all go through hard times, we all go through difficult patches in our lives and stuff. And the few times I've dealt with stress, it has literally been the most unpleasant thing I've ever gone through in my life. And I said, whether it's financial stress or relationship stress or whatever I've gone through in the past, it's pretty minor in the grand scheme of things. It's what everybody goes through. I've not had too much more stress than most folks, but I've had it, and it's never fun. And I said right away, I was like, I want to eliminate that at all costs, because that makes me worried, and I feel like that can really dig you into an early grave if you're constantly on edge about everything. And YouTube and the wrestling community is a big part of that. So I've worked very hard in the last couple of years to not get upset and all that shit and not get involved because it's exhausting. It's exhausting, and quite frankly, I myself and all of us should have much better things to do. Much better things to do. Much better ways to live our lives. I said that on Twitter recently before all this bullshit started. I'm like, I don't care if you like a show or whatever, or if you like a show that I hate, I am not going to go out of my way to tell you you're a dumbass or anything like that, because I have a life to live. And it's literally, when you get down to the AEW and WWE war, you get WWE people seeing people praise AEW and then get like offended by it. How can you like that bullshit? It's not up to you. Who cares? It's them. They're allowed to like whatever they want. Should not concern you whatsoever with what somebody else likes. And to waste your time tweeting that, or to waste your time passively aggressively not tagging them and saying, "Oh, I don't know why you fucking like this show." I'm like, that doesn't matter. Like, everybody has a brain inside their own skull, and those brains are allowed to make their own choices and decisions of what they like and don't like to watch. And why that's so impossible for the wrestling community to understand, whether you're on the AEW side of things or the WWE side of things, I have no idea. It goes back to probably how it was before, and a lot of what I said about, sports teams and things like that. People are just very, loyal, even if their loyalty doesn't make any fucking sense, and as wrestling fans, we should want all wrestling to be enjoyable and not worry about what the fans on the other side like. And you see that in politics now too. You have people that don't give a fuck about the actual betterment of the country. They give a fuck about sticking it to the people on the other side. That's why you hear stupid ass words like libtard mentioned all the time. Well, guess what? Jesus was a libtard. So all you're doing is insulting him. But that's the type of stuff now. I feel like if you're going to the voting booth, you're voting because you want to see the other side disappointed. And that is fucking unhealthy and not the way to make a decision based on that. You should make a decision based on what's good for the country, and having an egomaniacal maniac in the White House is not good for the country, regardless of what political side they're on. If you've got a crazy person like Trump that's a Democrat, I'm going to want him out of there too. All I ask for is not crazy. I know that we're going to bounce back and forth between, Democrat and Republican in the House, in the White House, and it's going to trade and all of that. I can live with that. I can live with the political divide. All I ask is you don't put a maniac in there. That's it. So, and unfortunately, it looks like we're always going to have one of those fuckers in there, no matter what happens in the next election. So that's what you see in that too. And it becomes more about the people. You get so annoyed at the people on social media that you can't wait for your side to win so you can rub it in their face. That's all you care about. You don't care about America. You care about rubbing it in their faces. And it's true. And the same goes with the wrestling. So you have WWE fans or diehards that hate AEW that sit there and pray that AEW's pay-per-view is a failure. Same thing on the other side. You have the WWE critics who hate it so much that really actually truly want them to fail. They want them to have a bad pay-per-view, so they go out of business and all that shit. Why? Just so you can stick it to the fans on social media? Am I the only one that finds that to be a colossal waste of time and a waste of brain power and energy? Not to lecture here. It's just, I kind of find that foolish. And I don't understand why we have to be that way. And if anything that I've learned in the last couple of days is that this shit is so out of hand that we should try to learn a lesson out of this and say, okay, we're kind of embarrassing ourselves here by, being so over the top, and we should all be banding together after we have a tragic loss like Shad Gaspard and Hana Kimura and all that. But instead we're at each other's throats, and there's been more negativity and bullshit on Twitter in the last 48 hours than there usually is. And it should be a time where there's less of that. And it's disappointing. It's disappointing, man. Fucking bullshit. Thank you for the super chat, K-Dogs Kennel. I appreciate that. You are the best there is on YouTube. Well, thanks. I've been a fan for many years. To watch your channel grow has been amazing. Proud to be a Patreon supporter. Well, thank you, man. We're growing, but at a snail's pace, you know what I mean? We're almost at 30K, but I'd like to be at 130K, you know what I mean? Devlin Husband, thank you for another $5. Don't know if you watch BTE, but the Young Bucks parodied the costume design for the revival. No, they didn't. I watched, I'm maybe 2 or 3 episodes behind Being the Elite. Maybe only 2. Oh, that's hysterical. Did that come out today? I'm watching that. That is great. That is great. Ooh, that's a bold statement there, Sonic 64. They're different eras, though. I know a lot of people say that as a cop-out, but it's true. I'm a big NBA fan, and I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I watched Dr. J, I watched Bird, I watched Magic, I watched Jordan, I watched Isaiah, watched all that stuff. And now to see the game now, with the Dirk Nowitzkis and the LeBron Jameses and the Kobes and the Durants, 2 different games, 2 different complete, styles of play. You're picking the 2010 Warriors over the 90s Bulls. To me, that 90s Bulls was just the the creme de la creme. I mean, had Jordan not retired after his dad died, I feel like he would have won 8 titles in a row, because there's those 2 years there where the Houston Rockets won. But they were different teams. If you could somehow make a fantasy match with those 2 teams, both in their prime, Warriors might win. But what would the rules be? How would the fouls be called? What referees would you use? You having 80s refs? If you're having 80s refs, I think the Warriors are going down. If you're having 2010s refs, they're going to win. I mean, if the 2010s Warriors went up against the 88 bad boy Pistons, they are fucked. Bill Laimbeer would eat them and shit them out. So would fucking Rick Mahorn and Adrian Dantley and Isaiah and all the other, and Rodman. They just beat the shit out of them. They have the Curry, the Jordan rule, they'd have the Curry rule. Don't let that fool shoot a 3-pointer. And back then, in those days, if you got fouled on a 3, it was not 3 free throws. They changed that in later years or whatever. So a lot goes into that, but I grew up a Pistons fan, so I was taught and born and bred to hate the Bulls, but I'm such a big fan of basketball, even I can't hate them. They were an impressive team. And Michael Jordan, I used to live in Wilmington. I've met Michael Jordan a couple of times, lived for many, many years in his hometown. Of course, he went to college at North Carolina. And even though he was a thorn in the Pistons' side, as they were his, and my loyalty should be with Detroit, and I should really hate Jordan, I don't. He was the best to ever do it, and he's awesome. So, yeah. But hey, you know what? I'm not going to disagree with you because you never know what's going to happen if you can put those players on the same court. I like questions like that. Finally got the audience up to what we're used to here at 525 people. Pretty cool. Who do I think is better, Ali or Ricochet? I don't know. Maybe Ali. Ricochet's really good. I mean, but Ricochet can do some really crazy things. Not that Ali can't, but when I think of Ricochet, I think of that match, with Ospreay and Ricochet and how crazy that was. But maybe Ali is a little bit more sound of a technical wrestler and a little bit less flippy, even though he's extremely flippy. Maybe Ricochet by a hair. I don't know, Mike Witt. I don't want to see one on Buck Zumhofe because he sucked. I remember him back in the AWA and that disgusting mullet and that pervy-ass mustache he had. And he never did anything. He was never a big star. He wasn't a big star in AWA. He worked a couple of matches in WWE as a jobber. Oh, man, I got to think. I'm pretty sure Triple H's first match was against him. I think. His first match in WWE was against Zumhofe, where they brought in as a jobber. But he was never any good. And he got in a little bit of trouble here in recent years. I think something to do with underage something. I don't remember if it was a pornography deal or if it was something. It's ugly, whatever it is. But he's not a big enough star to get an episode. Nobody gives a shit about Buck Zumhofe, and I hope he's rotting in jail, whatever he's doing. So, yeah, I'm going to vote no on him because I just don't care about his story. It's too creepy. Yeah, the Bulls had that crazy... the Warriors, I think, beat that record, but they did have a 70-win season or 72-win season. I remember that year. I remember. Follow the dream, North Carolina in the house. Where are you from, man? I'm a Wilmington guy. Oh. Ha. I thought you were serious. Well, I mean, it's dark, so I just thought that maybe you were serious there, Mike Witt. Mania 9, joking. Mania 9 wasn't that dark. I wasn't happy about that from a Bret Hart fan point of view, but it wasn't the worst. I liked the look of it. I mean, it was interesting. Small ass WrestleMania. What was the audience for that? 9,000 or something? It was a super small crowd for WrestleMania, but the look of it, it being outdoors, the Vegas theme or the Caesar theme or the Roman theme, excuse me, Heenan coming out on the backwards elephant and Savage being fed grapes, the debut of Jim Ross, Hulk Hogan's return, the Undertaker coming in on the thing and the bird and all that. It had some moments, it had some moments, and I'm still dying to see. I know they had filmed some stuff to eventually do a documentary on that, on the making of the WrestleMania, but it never got released. But a ton of footage exists, and we saw some of that on the last ride, and we've seen some of it over the years. So I'd like to see more of that Mania 9 stuff. That was good stuff. But yeah, Hogan coming back rubbed me the wrong way. Did you guys catch the story about Hulk Hogan being pitched and talked about before the pandemic about winning the Andre the Giant Battle Royal at this year's WrestleMania, actually winning it, coming into the ring, throwing a few punches, winning the battle royal. I would have actually liked to see that. Now, I know Hogan's not my favorite person. I'm very disgusted with how he's handled his life in the last several years, some of the things he said, and kind of his flimsy ass apologies and things like that. But from a wrestling standpoint, Hulk Hogan and what he's meant for WrestleMania, it might have been a good moment. He's in Tampa, it's in his hometown, he wins the battle royal, because the battle royal is a joke. Doesn't matter who wins it these days. And if he wins it and does his little posing routine just for nostalgia's sake, it was our last big memory of Hogan. But word is it fell through, number one, because of money. And then after the pandemic started and it was moved out of the stadium, they weren't going to do it anyway. But had it all gone as planned, that might have been an interesting WrestleMania memory. Definitely something you'd remember. And maybe finally, the real send off for Hogan, because he's always talked about having another match. He's 66 years old. And up until even this year, he's like, I can have one more match, brother. I'm like, how? Just walking up the ring steps and entering the ring should break your fucking hip. How the hell are you going to have a match? I don't know. So that was an interesting story. And maybe just part of me, even though I can't stand Hogan, maybe part of me is sad that it didn't happen. Maybe that would have been an interesting sight to see. That's for sure. Oh, Devlin, you're a Spurs fan. I have nothing against the Spurs because I've always had mad respect for Tim Duncan. But again, the Spurs had some battles with the Pistons, and the Pistons won the title in 2004. They made it to the finals again the following year and lost in a Game 7 to San Antonio. So San Antonio was annoying the shit out of me because I thought my Pistons team was good enough to win 2 or 3 titles, and they only came away with 1. But I'm also from North Carolina. Tim Duncan went to Wake Forest, and he is just a class act all the way around. A couple of my friends used to work at Chris Paul's restaurant, actually, in Winston, but I've always just respected Duncan. I've always just thought, and plus that team, Pop and some of the guys they had there, I was never and Ginobili and shit, even though Ginobili annoyed the shit out of me, that motherfucker. They were a good team and they had a good thing going. And they, kind of fundamental basketball, super well coached. I think Popovich is, just maybe a notch below Phil Jackson in terms of, legacy and things like that. So much like the Bulls, they're a team that I just greatly, greatly respect, even though they drove me nuts. Absolutely nuts. Undertaker versus Hogan in Saudi Arabia? Hell no. Chris Adams might be an interesting story, but a gnarly one. Not one that we want to get into. A lot of stuff to discuss there. I don't know if they'd have Austin on that or not. They probably would, but he'd have some things to tell. And they'd have Genie too. Arn Sid stabbing. It's a good one too. Could you make a whole episode out of that? I think the dudes are cool now, and they're both alive, so they could do, and neither one of them are under contract with WWE, so that theoretically could happen. I'm down with it. Ooh, Dark Side of the Ring on Grizzly Smith. I don't know. There's ones to be had. I'm sure we'll see. Oh, Uptown Charlotte. Nice. Nice to see that, Dean. Say hi to North Carolina for me. I'm so bummed because I was planning on going out there this summer to visit some friends and stuff, but it's not going to, I just don't want to travel right now with the pandemic and all of that. So once this started happening, I kind of threw away my summer vacation. I was planning on going for a few days in July, and I'm really sad about that because I didn't go last year either. And so I've missed my old home the last couple of years and really wanted to get back there. So I'm hoping that I can sooner than later, once it's kind of safe to travel again. But I was ready for the beach, man. Wanted to go spend a few days on the beach. This is actually one of my favorite days when I lived back in North Carolina. Memorial Day was so fun. It was always like the kickoff of the summer. I was off every year for that. And every year, me and my friends, we get a big group of us and we'd go out to the beach super early in the morning because it's really hard to even find a spot if you go to like a popular beach. And some years we went out there the night before and we dug a hole in the ground, like a really deep hole, and put a keg in it. And then we buried the keg. And so just to where you had the tap hanging out of the dirt, and you could just fill your beer with that all day long. And we'd go out there maybe 9 or 10 in the morning and stay down there until sundown, and just drink and hang out and eat food and get in the water and play volleyball and do all that shit. Did that for years, probably 10 straight years in Wilmington there, Wrightsville Beach. It was so fun, and it was always kind of like the blast off of the summer. And I don't get that here in California. It's not the same. May is different here than it is on the East Coast. And I miss that a lot. But Memorial Day always brings back great memories. But even though if I was living there, I probably wouldn't be doing that this year because of the restrictions and everything. But I always, it's the only time of year that I think I preferred living on the East Coast than here. The rest of the year, when it's 80 degrees on Thanksgiving Day. I love that shit, but there's certain parts of the year where I had a little more fun on the East Coast, and this is one of them. Memorial Day memories. Yeah, Devlin, the trip to Hawaii, I'm sure, is still happening. We've got that plan for next year. That's buddying up, though, with WrestleMania, so it's going to be kind of a stressful thing for me now because I really wanted to go WrestleMania, but I've got that trip overlapping it by a day or two, so I'm going to make it work somehow. I'm just nervous about something getting fucked up. So we'll see when next year rolls around, and we'll see how the rest of this year plays out. We really don't know. I'm really curious when we finally see audience back in the arena. Still could be a ways off. Marty Jannetty, Dark Side of the Ring would be good, but that's not done being told yet. I think Marty is in a really bad place. He is an absolute piece of shit. Back in the day when I had Facebook, when I had a first personal Facebook account, I've since shut it down, but I was friends with Marty Jannetty. He accepted my friend request years ago, and I would often post on Twitter screenshots of the crazy shit that he would put on Twitter. He's shameless, you know. He just goes out and fucking drinking and doing drugs all night and then admits to it, talks about all the girls he hooked up with. He says vulgar, horrible, crazy shit. He said racist things about Obama and stuff on his page. He's just a stupid country fuck is all he is, and he's a disgrace. So, but I haven't seen any of his posts for a while because I haven't been on Facebook in forever. So I saw it on Twitter like last week where he posted a picture of 4 pictures of a girl, you know, and he's like, I'm not sure if she's underage, but what do you think? I hope she's underage unless she's lying to me. And, you know, like a year or so ago, he posted something about a girl, want him to hook up with a girl, but he's worried that she could be his daughter. And he was asking the people they would do it anyway. Like, he is messed up. I mean, this is probably beyond, you know, pills and pot. You know, we're probably talking meth and some serious brain altering shit for this guy because, you know, he's just old and busted, disgusting brown teeth, crooked ass face, and he's just on drugs and he's a mess. And, you know, and it's so disturbing that it's like, I think he's beyond DDP saving. I think even if DDP tried to take him in, he's worse than Scott Hall and Jake Roberts. Imagine that. Imagine being worse than Jake the Snake Roberts and Scott Hall. But he is. And I don't think he's ever going to clean up, and I don't think he wants to. I think he somehow gets off on this. And for some, we talked about this earlier about people like feeding into negativity and stupid shit. He has an audience for this. Like when he posts these things, he gets likes. He gets people commenting saying, "Oh, you're so awesome, Marty." All they're doing is encouraging this behavior, and they're encouraging him, and they're walking him and holding his hand right into an early grave because at some point he will overdose, you know, and don't egg him on. You know, I was surprised at how few comments were like, "Bro, I'm worried about you. This is a little bit out there. You need to get some help." But instead, he gets supported. He gets positive reinforcement instead of negative, and I think that's not helping him at all. So I kind of am almost losing hope on Marty, and I think eventually he'll get a dark side of the ring when his story ends tragically. Because it will. I said the same thing about China, and I hated to say it. I hated to say that. You know, when she passed away, one of the first things I said in my video about her death was that I knew it was going to happen. I just knew in my heart of hearts that it was going to happen, and I kind of feel the same thing about Marty. You know, so I just have no respect for him. You know, there's some people who battle demons that I truly want to get help, and I feel like they aren't in full control of their actions, and I know there are good people underneath, and I want to see them do better, but I don't get that feeling from Marty. I feel like he's somebody that doesn't want to get better. I feel like this is who he's always been, and he's always been a partier. He's been fired and rehired by WWE in the neighborhood of 6 times, and he's just never going to learn, I don't think, you know? I just don't think he's ever going to... I don't have any hope for him, basically. So, and plus he's so offensive. You know, it's hard to have sympathy for somebody that also says vulgar, stupid shit. You know, if you could have a little more sympathy for him if you could really feel that he was struggling and dealing with stuff. But, you know, he seems to embrace it, and he seems to be proud that he's got a mouthful of brown teeth and a body full of meth, and he brags about it. And I think that's fucking stupid. So, Marty, get your shit together or go to jail. One or the other. What's going on, Nick Musser? Good to see you. Oh, yeah, and the Buff Bagwell thing. I didn't really catch that. Was he doing like a cameo video or something for somebody? but his face was all beat up. I don't know if he got his ass kicked. I wasn't aware that Steve Austin and Kurt Angle beat him up that bad when they threw him out the back door of Raw. But he was all mangled. I don't know if he was in a car accident or what happened to him, but he's like cutting a promo with his buff hat on with a face full of ground beef. I don't know what was going on there, but he doesn't look like he's in a great spot either. So, yeah. I don't know, man. Maybe Shawn knocked a screw loose when he kicked him. Could be. Oh, you took a look at that, Devlin? Yeah, it's gnarly, isn't it? I mean, what kind of person, what kind of human being says shit like that? What kind of human being does stuff like that? So I'm glad I don't have to. I had almost forgotten about it because I used to see Marty so much, on my timeline. I used to just like roll my eyes, but I didn't want to like unfriend him because it's like the sun, you know you're not supposed to look at it, but you do it anyway, kind of thing. And I just kind of wanted to keep an eye on how ridiculously stupid he would get from one day to the next. But then after I was done with Facebook, I kind of forgot about him until the recent stuff came up. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that moron existed, and he's still doing dumb shit. 2 years later, after the last time I kind of looked at one of his posts, he's still acting as dumb as he ever was, and I don't know how he's managed to, to survive this long. I just don't know. Jesus. Anyway, but it's been a fun stream tonight. I think we got into what we needed to get into. Now we got about 700 people in there in the chat. That's pretty cool. You guys smash that thumbs up for me a couple of times. I would greatly appreciate it if you would do that. Answer a few more questions before I get out of here, if you'd like. Seth in his prime versus Punk in his prime. Seth, I like Punk, but Punk's not athletic. Punk, Seth is very athletic. Punk, I remember in the DVD, one of his friends said he had lead in his ass, and that was a really good way to describe him. Because he could do stuff. He could do a top rope elbow and shit, but he wasn't really that athletic. I mean, I think if I spent a solid year in the gym, I could be as athletic as him. He was better at, kind of psychology, really good at promos, and knew what he was doing in the ring and stuff, and could have good matches, but I think Seth is in just an overall better athletic shape than CM Punk, and is a little bit better in the ring, in my opinion. I don't know. What do I name a Ricochet and Cedric team? I was hoping they would be a real team, but kind of feels like that's fizzled out too. What's the Gulak news, Zane? Wasn't aware of the Gulak news. Is he turning up somewhere? Oh. Huh. That's weird. Drew Gulak works SmackDown tapings. What's going on? They got Kurt Angle coming in this Wednesday to referee the Matt Riddle and Timothy Thatcher match. That's weird. Because he was released. You got Drake Maverick, now one match away from the finals of the Cruiserweight tournament, and he's released, and now Gulak's back in to work the SmackDown tapings. I thought Gulak was a candidate to show up in that ladder match at Double or Nothing. Well, good. I didn't want Gulak to leave to begin with, but apparently he wanted out, so maybe this is a one-time deal. Reading a little bit about that. It's unknown if he's re-signed with the company or not, but he'll be back on SmackDown this week. All right, good. That's good news. Yeah, Nick, I kind of like that. I like that they did that because the Last Dance stuff has been pretty good on ESPN, and this is kind of their version of that. And honestly, I like the Undertaker one better. And again, primarily because it's the first time we've seen him in this light. The Bull stuff was fascinating to me because I remember all that vividly well, but a lot of these stories of stuff like I kind of already knew. I've seen Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson and Jerry Krause and guys like that in interviews all throughout the years and talking about their shit. So I wasn't, I wasn't like on the edge of my seat for as much of it. And I felt like a lot of it dragged out. They spent a lot of time on subjects I was surprised that they did talk about. So where the Undertaker one is kind of like, it's nail biting. Like everything you watch is like, oh, this is so awesome. Look at all this footage, look at this match and look at what's going on here. Very cool stuff. And a really an inside look on him and his family and his life and all that. So I've liked the Last Dance better, or the Last Ride, excuse me. Dark Side of the Ring on Foley and Taker. I don't know if it was tragic though. That was an awesome moment, man. Never forget that Hell in the Cell. I don't know if my buddy Daniel from North Carolina is here, but we watched that together, and I had just purchased a couple of weeks prior to King of the Ring. I just purchased a big screen TV, one of those TVs that had on wheels, those big ass boxy things. They literally weighed as much as a moose. And I had a giant oak entertainment center that encompassed it, and I bought all this shit and like financed it after I got a decent job. And that was the first show I had ever watched on the TV. It was King. As a matter of fact, the entertainment center that I had purchased with it wasn't even built yet. It was just the TV kind of sitting in the floor. I hadn't even put and connected everything together, and it was so crazy to us. Nowadays, I got a 60-inch in my bedroom and a 55 hanging on the wall. It's nothing. But back then, a 50-inch like square TV was huge. You felt like you were at the show. And I got to watch Mick Foley Peter Pan off the top of that cage in 50-inch of standard definition TV, and we marked out. As a matter of fact, Daniel, he wasn't driving at the time, because I remember his dad came to pick him up from my house, from my apartment, and we went outside to get him. We're like, you got to come in and see this. And of course, I rewound the tape, and we had to show it to him. Rest in peace, Dewey. He was a great guy. He was my bowling coach. And he didn't give a shit about wrestling, but we were so amazed. Like, Mick Foley died. It was the craziest bump we had ever seen. And we got to watch it in big, full color. It was great. Great memory of King of the Ring 98. Jorge, who is the 24/7 champion? You know that. Tom Brady. Everybody knows that. What's wrong with you, Jorge? Who's the 24/7 champion? My God. Marty, yeah, I believe he's older than Sean. Yes. He looks like he's about 156 years old. There's Daniel. He is here. I knew Daniel was here. That thing was over 1,000 pounds, and you made me move it 30 times. Yeah, we moved that thing a lot of apartments because I bought it right before I was moving. I think that's the reason why it wasn't set up complete with the entertainment center, because I was about to move down the road and having to lift that thing up one fucking step at a time. Now I can pick up my shit by myself, just carry it on my shoulder. And TV's bigger than it was back then. But man, that thing was a beast. I don't know what the hell I was thinking buying that stuff. But man, I went from a little 19-inch Magnavox TV to that. So watching wrestling on that was quite the treat. It was. Now you think nothing of it, but back then, I've shared that picture before too. It's in a Q&A somewhere, and I know I've put it on Twitter of my apartment with the big TV and everything going on in there, and I had a big like Stone Cold Steve Austin thing on the wall, which I don't even know what happened to that. I got a cat in the bathroom fucking with the toilet seat. I hope he falls in. Yeah, Mike, we mentioned that Dark Side of the Ring on Dynamite Kid. I think you do one individually or together on the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs have two equally sad stories. I don't know if you can cram them both into 45 minutes. It might have to be a two-parter, on the Bulldogs. Do one on Dynamite and then one on Davey. Might be good, but that's on my list. Bulldogs for sure. We speculated on that, Nick. That's what I'm worried about when we finally get to the final episode of The Last Ride, that Taker says this is it. Maybe he feels like a big 5-part documentary on his life is the best way to go out over a match. And it would make sense, because if you're going to do a big chronicling, a big 5-part series on The Undertaker, it's going to be obsolete because his career's not over. You haven't told the final chapter yet, So it makes me wonder at the end of this, if that's the announcement we get, which it would be bittersweet for me. It would be, part of me was like, okay, good way to, we finally had this big, 5 hours of content on his life. We all took it in, collectively said goodbye to him. And hey, his last match being the Boneyard match against a Hall of Famer like AJ could be worse, right? But it wasn't in the ring, and it wasn't in front of an audience, and it wasn't, where I would like it to be. I either wanted it to be at WrestleMania 33, where it was, when he did the hat, gloves, and jacket thing, or I want it to be November 22nd later on this year, on the 30th anniversary of his debut. But if it turns out to be with this, I can live with it. All I want is for him to be at peace, really, to be honest with you, because, his career is too important to wrestling to end like on a sour note. So if this is the way it ends and he's cool with it, then I ain't going to say a word. Who am I to criticize a man's 30-year career, just because it didn't personally satisfy me the way I wanted it to. Whenever he ends it, he's going to end it. I'm going to be cool with it. But if I had my say, and I know I don't, I'd be doing the audience thing at the Survivor Series. Yeah, Brian Pillman's an obvious one. He definitely needs to, because his story is incredible, and sad and very tragic. And I feel like had it not been for his accident, he could have probably lived through that and done some more in wrestling and had good programs with people had he not gotten injured, could have gone to WWE. Think about, I've said this before, think about Brian Pillman. For those of you who are familiar with his work, around the time that he became the loose cannon, started acting like a nut job in WCW, went to ECW, and then came into WWE. Imagine that Pillman without the ankle injury, 100% healthy, athletic like he was back in WCW, with that persona on the mic and that character. Imagine the confrontations in the ring on the mic between that Brian Pillman and a D-Generation X Shawn Michaels. That would be gold. And I'll tell you what, Pillman wouldn't take any of his shit at all. They're both athletic. They're both good looking. They're both edgy. They're both great wrestlers. I think that could have been magic there. I think there would have been some personal tension because I know Shawn would have clashed with Pillman and Pillman would beat the fuck out of him, if he tried to pull any of his stupid Shawn shit with him. But the chemistry, I think, in the promos would have been just insane, because Shawn could cut promos back then too, especially when he was in DX and stuff, and how great he thought he was and everything. And I think Pillman would have given him a run for his money, provided he was healthy, but Pillman wasn't the same in the ring. He could barely move around. Or back in his WCW days, he could do some amazingly athletic things. And plus he was tough as shit too, That's why I always think like in a real fight, Pillman would just annihilate Shawn. But I think that could have been a fun feud. It's always been one of my dreams, to those like, edgy, extreme attitude era type of guys, button heads, for the title would have been fun. And I think a healthy Pillman would have looked great with that Winged Eagle title around his waist. I don't think Shawn would have done the job for him, but I still think it could have been good. Yeah, Pillman was a tragedy. And me and Daniel watched that together too. We saw the whole fucking thing, and they announced the deal in the pre-show. I think I was at his house watching that for some reason. And we went down there and the news had just broke, and it was like, holy crap, The next night on Raw, they have to do the 10-bell salute, which is the first time we had ever seen that. We had never seen them. We'd go on to see it. That's how sad it is. We would go on to see that like 20 more times in our lives. But, back then to have the entire roster gathered up on the stage with the graphic on the screen and the 10 bells and the silence, it was the first time as fans we'd really gone through that. And unfortunately, we'd go through it so many more times it would become uncomfortable. But that was the first time I remember, and plus, so much was going on. Brett had already been forced out of WWE. He was on his way to WCW. Vince had already had the meeting with him and said, I want you gone. That happened like 2 weeks prior at MSG. Then Pillman dies, and it was just an uncomfortable feeling, in the arena. Even later on, I remember, the same night that he died at the pay-per-view, Owen Hart had that match. Steve Austin was involved. These are all people that have a lot of history with Brian Pillman, and to have to still go out there and perform probably wasn't easy. I remember seeing Sunny. You could see, like she had some puffy eyes from some of the crying that she was doing and having to get through the show and stuff. So that was probably rough on everybody. And I don't even want to talk. I've talked about this before. It's up on a mic drop on my channel if you want to listen to it. But I've not only talked about the Pillman death over there, I've talked about the extremely uncomfortable interview they did with Melanie on Raw, which still gives me the heebie-jeebies, why they even did that and brought her on there. Not cool at all. And uncomfortable and weird and all that shit. But best of luck to Junior, man. I'll tell you what, that kid looks just like his dad. He's got the hair down. He's got the outfit. He's, he was so young when Brian died. He doesn't remember him, but he has studied his dad's work for sure. And he's doing good. I really want to see him make it, one day. I think he still needs some work and stuff. And, he's doing the MLW thing and working various places. And if he continues to improve, I think maybe WWE could sign him to an NXT deal. WWE could use him to do a Brian Pillman Hall of Fame induction. I would love to see that. Dude's a spitting image of his dad. It's a lot like Oj and Owen. They look a lot alike, and I like seeing that, and even Harry Smith looks a lot like Davey Boy. I'm starting to see that now that he's getting older. When he was younger, I didn't see it too much because he was taller than Davey and stuff, but now I can see the resemblance a lot more. I can see it in Georgia too. And so a lot of these wrestlers that I grew up with and grew up loving, I'm seeing them in their kids now. And that's, for an old man like me, it's kind of comforting to be able to, I know everybody hates Charlotte, but for me who grew up with Ric Flair in his heyday, it's kind of cool seeing his daughter as a champion and carrying on the legacy. Unfortunately, the fans don't see it that way because they're so concerned about overpush and nepotism and all that, but I kind of think it's cool. I like seeing the second generation live on. I wish Curtis Axel could have done more in WWE. I would have loved to see him carry on the perfect legacy, and so many others, Ted DiBiase Jr. and a few others that have not quite lived up to their father's legacy, but some really have. Dustin Rhodes and people like that. So I'm all for families, in wrestling. Hello from the Bahamas, right on. Barry Thompson, I was just down in the Caribbean in January on the Jericho cruise. What's going on? Thanks for joining us. It's late, man. It's 1 a.m. in the morning. I would love to see Will Ospreay go to AEW for sure. I don't know. I mean, he makes so much money wrestling internationally. He's got a good deal in Japan and everything. But they brought him in, contend for that TNT championship. Ooh, he's got some matchups to have over there. I think they should go after him. He's one of those names that, I think would be great in NXT, but they already have everybody, They already got Gargano and Ciampa and fucking Killer Cross and so many great wrestlers. Let's let Ospreay go somewhere else where he can be a big fish in a little pond instead of vice versa. But him making an appearance as an AEW, I am all for that. He can have some matches there. Give me some Ospreay and fucking Moxley matches or something. Holy shit. Hells yeah. Michael Como, 1 a.m. Y'all are East Coasters. Thoughts on Teddy Hart? I hate him. Never liked him. Think he's a fucking douchebag, prick, loser, fuck up. The most recent trouble he got himself in was disgusting. And he's always rubbed me the wrong way because he's incredibly talented. And I remember like years ago seeing shoot interviews of him and what a prick he was in the shoot interview. Just a douchey, arrogant asshole. Just more of that stuff we talked about earlier that I fucking can't stand in people's personalities. And, he's always in trouble with the law, can't get himself out from underneath the drugs, always in jail. And then most recently he, assaulted the girl and one of her friends had to run him off and called the police and he was back in custody again. And it's fucked up because not only has the Harts in his legacy, he was an extremely athletic and talented wrestler and he flushed it down the shitter. This guy could have been in WWE. They would have gladly brought him in, especially at that time as a Hart member and all the things he could do athletically in the ring. He could have been big and he pissed it away. No respect and no sympathy for him whatsoever. Fuck him. Fuck him. We need to do a dark side of the ring on the virus. That is not an absurd notion. We actually probably could get that. Maybe in 2 seasons from now or something. Andre got the 10 bell, but not like that. Andre got the 10 bell like in the first week of Raw. Like Raw was brand spanking new when Andre died. Because Andre died in January of 93, and that's when Raw started. Or maybe he died in February of 93. Andre died real quick after Raw started, and they just did, Howard Finkel announced it in the Manhattan Center, and they did 10 bell. But I'm talking about like the Raw set, where the rest. So that was the first time, the Pillman thing was the first time we saw that. And even in 94, 95, and 96, we didn't see any of that. 94, Joey Morella, passed away. They didn't even mention it on TV, I don't think. I don't remember hearing about the Morella death on TV. I remember hearing about it after the fact because I remember being surprised. I knew about it by the time we got to SummerSlam because Gorilla was on SummerSlam. Gorilla was doing something. He was like running the hotline or something at SummerSlam. And I remember being surprised that he was there doing that just a few weeks after Morella died because I think Morella died on January 4th. And I believe he had already taped the TVs, which meant after he died, you had to watch him referee matches on TV, and back in those days, I think they were voicing the commentary at Stanford live over the taped show. So it's probably hard for them to have to, talk about that knowing that the referee in the match is deceased. So yeah, that was a horrible one, man. It was another just unfair one. Morella was awesome. Hogan's full of shit, Michael. I remember that. Hogan did the promo at WrestleMania 9. He goes, Bret Hart's a Hulkamaniac. No, he's not. Well, yes, maybe he was. He would join up with Hogan in WCW, right? After we had all heard in the dirt sheets that he hated Hogan, and then he came out with the Hogan shirt and joined up with him. But yeah, Hogan's full of shit if he thinks Bret's a Hulkamaniac. Do I think Rey Mysterio is good? He's okay. Not a horrible wrestler, not the worst luchador I've ever seen. Yes, of course Rey Mysterio is good. He's a goddamn Hall of Famer, former world champion. He's the man. I can't wait to see him fake retire next week. You know, you mean like a digital remaster of the old Raw is War episodes? They could. They're all available. Oh, man. All right. Yeah. Thank you for that, Sports Fanatic. So, yeah, I was right. January 93. I remember they even covered it on my local news where I lived in BFE, North Carolina. I remember they talked about it. Little Southern lady. And today we have some sad news that Andre the Giant passed away. Most people know Andre the Giant from the WWF. I'll never forget that. And they even talked about it on the local news, which was cool. He got a lot of love when he passed away, and that was sad. Still regret. I'm pretty sure his final appearance in America was with WCW, which kind of irked me a little bit because it's just, you know, he's so ingrained in WWE. But yeah, I remember when it was announced. I didn't know. I think I knew before Raw because I think I heard it on the news. But then I thought it was a nice little tribute they did to him, and then he was the first ever inductee into the Hall of Fame. Which Gorgeous Georgie talking about? The WCW version? She was awesome looking. The real Gorgeous George, trendsetter, man. He started all that stuff. He started the flamboyant stuff. You know, maybe you saw a little bit of that, but he was kind of the pioneer of all that shit, of being able to kind of get under the fan's skin with your behavior and your pretentiousness and, you know, your vain and shallowness and all that type of stuff. He was kind of a pioneer in that, and it's something we still see to this day. You know, there's traces of Gorgeous George in everybody, you know, up until modern guys like Dolph Ziggler and shit like that, you know. It's all there. It's all there. Thank you, Devlin. I always have that southern accent down. I spent a lot of years there, man. I can turn it on and off just like that, like it's nothing, and then I can go back to talking like a regular person, not like a country hick. But I love the South, man. Love the food. I miss me some biscuits, man. I need some biscuits and butter and maybe not grits. Grits are nasty, but I need some fried chicken and fried stuff. I just need fried stuff. That's what I need, man. Oh, man, it was WrestleMania. It wasn't WrestleMania 5, Michael. It was WrestleMania 3. WrestleMania 3, Joey Morella, according to Ventura, botched the 3 count starting the Andre and Hogan match, and he gave him so much shit. And it was like a little inside joke because you would hear so many times on commentary when Jesse and Gorilla would be together, Jesse would always give shit to Morella, just fucking with, you know, because the audience at home didn't know that, you know, Joey was Gorilla's son. But I think that was more of like a ribbing perspective. It's like when Bobby Heenan used to do commentary with Vince McMahon, and he used to comment on his pay and shit. He's like, they don't pay me enough to do this, Vince, and you know I'm in charge of this place, right, Vince? You know I could fire you if I wanted to. Like, he'd always like say little things like that, knowing that most of the people at the audience at home didn't know the real deal, but those who did would probably get a chuckle out of the kind of the inside joke. I remember once on WWF Superstars, like in 86 or 87, back when Bruno was doing commentary with Jesse and Vince. Imagine that 3-man team. And they were there together for a while on TV. And they were joking about kayfabe. I can't remember what they said, but it was something about kayfabe. Like, what's that guy's name? Kayfabe. And Vince kind of gives us a laugh underneath his breath. And so there's little bits of that you can catch sometimes. And at the end of the Slammy Awards, when they're rolling through the credits, the executive producer is kayfabe. So they would always do little things like that, which I got a kick out of back in the day. And I especially do now that I can appreciate it and I understand it. Yeah, collard greens. I don't hate them. I like collards. I remember when I first came in contact with them, I'm like, I ain't eating that shit, but they're good. Put a big fucking ham hock in there or something. Collards are delicious. Absolutely delicious. And I wouldn't have thought that I would like them, but I do. And I like cornbread too. Tiger Zilla Gamer, let's go ahead and block you. No, I'm kidding. I know you're joking. Imagine if Marty hung out with Herb Abrams. I don't want to imagine that. I don't think there's enough cocaine in this universe to satisfy those two appetites. Yeah, that was awesome back in the day there, Sports Fanatic. But anyway, I can't believe we've just been hanging out. I think we stopped the Raw review an hour in, and we've been going for about 2.5 hours now. So I'll go ahead and sign off and get out of here since this was a long hangout tonight. But I wanted to stay up extra time because I know I'm probably not going to be up here until Saturday. Like I said, unless something crazy happens this week and I come up and do a news brief or something like that, I'm going to concentrate the rest of this week on finishing up the big review for Sunday, which is going to be great, on Wrestling Society X. Super stupid shit, and I can't wait to discuss it and review it. That's going to be fun. And the day before, I'll be up here, of course, on Saturday for the Winged Eagle podcast. And that's it. I'll be home Wednesday night, live tweeting, watching Dynamite, watching NXT. So I'll interact with you guys on social media on Wednesday, but probably not a video until Saturday. So anyway, thanks for hanging out tonight, guys. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun as always. Take care of yourselves. Have a good rest of your week, and I'll catch you on Saturday. Be good. Peace.